The basic laws of health. Incorporate those 8 laws. They sound simple. They sound simple. You may have heard it your whole life, but I tell you, those 8 laws will make the difference of whether you live long or you live short. The things that you can grow in your garden, that you can put in your kitchen, that's where your medicine cabinet should be. Welcome to Old Mountain Remedies. You know, as we're coming closer to the time of the end, as we look at economic challenges, more and more folks are concerned about how do I take care of myself if something happens. If I'm moved out in the country, what do I do without a hospital? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. But can we first start with prayer? Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you so much for caring for us and for giving us these Old Mountain Remedies that we can take care of our needs, actually more effective. Lord, this morning, guide us and direct us as folks are looking how to prepare themselves for your soon coming. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, this is actually what it looks like in the mountains of Tennessee where I'm from. Your typical old cabin of years ago, and actually people still live in cabins just like this. Well, today we're going to look at Old Mountain Remedies. But before we get into the specific remedies, I would like to cover some 8 laws of health. And many folks may say, well, those 8 laws, I've heard those 8 laws, and they're, what does that have to do with this? Well, I tell you, these 8 laws are the foundation, and what we're going to talk about today is going to be built upon that. So let's talk about these 8 laws very quickly. You know, as my father taught me how to take care of a tractor or equipment or the truck, there was basic laws that we had to do. We had to change the oil. We had to rotate the tires. You never pull the tractor out without checking the oil, without greasing every grease position. You had to grease every piece of implement before you took the tractor out. Well, the same thing is true with our bodies. These basic laws of health are so very, very important. Let's look at them. The first one is nutrition. What do you eat? The next one is exercise. Are you exercising? Are you moving? So many people today sit in a house, they're playing games, they're watching TV, or they're just working all the time. They've got 2 jobs, 3 jobs. So many people who come in and see me, they don't have time to hardly even sleep or eat because they have to work so much to pay the bills. They definitely don't have time to exercise. Exercise is critical. The next one is water. Are you drinking enough water? Well, can I count the water in my soft drinks? Can I count the water in my coffee? Can I count the water? I've had literally people ask me, can I count the water in my moonshine? No, you cannot. Are you drinking just plain water? Very, very important for your brain to work. For every cell in the body, you've got to have adequate water. Sunshine. Yes, sunshine's important for making vitamin D, which vitamin D is so important. But it's also important as you're outside and as the sunshine comes through the iris of the eye and it goes and it stimulates the pineal gland, it converts tryptophan, which is in your flaxseed, ground flaxseed that you eat within 15 minutes of grinding, but it stimulates the pineal gland to convert the tryptophan into serotonin. Well, guess what? Do you know if you have sunglasses on that doesn't happen? You got to take your sunglasses off at least some of the time that you're outside. So sunshine is so very important for us to get that nutrition, that exercise, that water and sunshine. And then comes temperance. What is temperance? Well, as I teach the kids in the school system, I tell them it's making the right decisions. Yes, it's not drinking alcohol, it's not smoking, it's not doing illicit drugs, but it's far, far more than that. It's not getting into certain conversations. You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever been into conversations that when you stepped into that conversation, all of a sudden your body went because you got so upset? Well, maybe you just don't need to step into that conversation. It may have excited you, it may have depressed you. What about music? Is there music that may excite your body? When I was a young boy on the dairy farm, my dad was trying to figure out how to get more milk out of the cows. So he thought, let's try music. So he started playing different kinds of music to find out if it affected how much milk the cows would produce. So he tried country music. Well, it wasn't country music today. It was the old country music of Hank Williams Sr. Less milk. And then he tried gospel music. Now that was the gospel music of back when, and it was still not too good. And then he tried, and this is going to date it, he tried Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley. Guess what happened to our milk production when he tried that test? Terrible. Old Betsy got upset. And then he tried classical music. And we actually got the best milk production that we'd ever gotten. And from that point forward, there was no barking in the dairy parlor, there was no loud talking, and there was classical music. Does music affect how you feel? Does does music make you either excited or depressed? If you're listening to someone that's drunk all the time or going and doing this or doing that, absolutely it can affect your health. So temperance is making the right decisions. Yes, what food you eat, what you drink. Are you other lifestyle things that aren't healthy? But it's also what you're listening to, what you're looking at, what you're watching, making the right decisions. And then fresh air. God blessed me by placing me in the mountains of East Tennessee. And we've got good air. But when I go and as I go out to LA and as I'm coming in, landing into LA to go speak, you know what you're getting ready to get into. You're just landing in the smog, and I feel so terrible for those folks out there. Is there good pure air where you live? Are you doing good diaphragmatic breathing where when you breathe, your diaphragm drops and your belly comes out and your lungs get a full inspiration of air? Or are you breathing like a chihuahua where you're just barely breathing up here? Did you know you won't live as long if you breathe like a chihuahua? You got to have good diaphragmatic breathing. You know, like when your baby was born and the baby's stomach went up and down. Or when you were in voice class and the voice teacher laid you down and put a book on your stomach and said, breathe and learn how to breathe where that book goes up and down. That's the kind of breathing that we need to do. Very, very important for our health. What time do you go to bed? That's a tough one. It was my tough one. It was the toughest one for me. Of all these laws of health, it was my toughest one. My wife, Mary Lou, liked going to bed at 8 o'clock at the latest. And for me, that's when I kicked in. That's when I was ready to go. That's when I could really do reports and all kinds of work at work. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, my brain would start slowing down. And so many times I was working at work at night because that's when I was the most productive. A friend of mine came up to me, a fellow, we grew up together, we went to college together, he's an optometrist, and we were at ASI, and he came up to me and we were in the hall, and he said, Walt, he says, I got to share something with you. He says, I feel so good, I'm a new man. I said, Todd, what are you doing? He says, I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock. That's it. I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock. You won't believe it. You got to try it. You'll be a new man. I tried it. And guess what? My whole body's clock system just went poof. I can go to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I can sleep now. And I feel so much better. They actually found that your brain has a cleaning system that kicks on about 9 o'clock at night. This is new stuff, only about 2 years old in science, cutting edge. And it found that around 9 o'clock, your brain goes into a pre-scrub. And from 10 o'clock to midnight, it does a normal scrub and it flushes your brain. Part of the lymphatic type system, it's called the glymphatic system. It only has a 3-hour period that it works, and it only kicks on if you're asleep. The last law of health is not the least, it's the most important. The last law of health is how it works. trusting in God, because only God does the healing. And that aspect of us saying, God, heal me, I trust you, is so, so effective. Try it. So as we look at Old Mountain Remedies today, we're going to look at from blueberries to red clover. But this is the foundation. You've got to be doing this. If you're not doing this, then the other's not going to do its job right. So I encourage you, apply these 8 laws of health because they work. How long ago did we see this used? Let's go back to Isaiah. For Isaiah had said, let them take a lump of figs and lay it for a plaster upon the boil, and he shall recover. I heard a doctor one time say, well, that was just the act of trusting in God. It had no physiological benefit. Well, guess what? It does. We've actually found that if you take a fig and if you cut it in half, and if you lay it on a boil, or you lay it on a cancer tumor, it can actually shrink the cancer. It can help to heal the boil. Let's say that you don't have a fig that you just got off the tree, like my great-grandmother down in Meridian, Mississippi when I was a young boy. She had a huge fig tree that it was just loaded with figs. It may not be fresh like that, but it may be dried. Well, you can take that dried fig, research shows us, hydrate it, cut it in half and then hydrate it, and then place it on a boil or a wound or cancer. That's what we like using it on a lot. And it actually has healing. Is there anything else in the Bible? And he answered and said, a man that is called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said unto me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And I went and washed, and I received sight. Did Christ use natural remedies? Absolutely. Was there trust there? Absolutely. Do you know I trust God every time I sit down and eat every day? When I sit down at breakfast and I eat, I ask God to bless it. I've got to do my part. I can't just say, God, take care of me, I'm not going to eat anymore. You've got to ask Him to bless that food and then you take it in. It's a 2-part thing. We've got to do our part, and God has the power to make that apple turn into nutritious blood that then goes to every cell in our body and gives us an apple brain instead of a Twinkie brain. And he took him a potsherd and scraped himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes. Who was this? This was Job. What did he have? A lot of boils. Has anybody ever had a boil? They're painful. I've had 2 in my life. Very painful. And he sat down in what? Ashes. Ashes. Charcoal. Sound familiar? Did Job use natural remedies? Let's look at remedies by diagnosis. And we're going to jump into some natural remedies, some old mountain remedies, and how do we address them? Again, don't forget as we go through this, as you take good notes, remember those 8 laws of health that you must apply. Nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, making the right decisions, fresh air, rest, and trust in God. That's the foundation that y'all have got to put in place. Then you can apply what we're going to talk about today. Wounds are something that I see quite a bit, and a lot of folks are afraid when they go into the country that what happens if there's a major wound? I cut myself with a machete or whatever. How do we heal that? Well, God's amazing. He's given us these natural remedies that we can use and they heal. This is a foot. This gentleman has diabetic neuropathy, and in just 4 weeks, we see this. It's ready to put a skin graft on. How do we do it? When I worked in regular health care, I used to have nurses that worked for me, and they specialized just in wounds. Whether we're using keratin products, we were doing betadine and brown sugar, whether we were doing, this is years ago, heat lamps or whatever it was, we never saw results that went from this to this in just 4 weeks. How does it work? Well, what we do is first you want to clean the wound and then you want to use hydrotherapy. And hydrotherapy is very, very powerful. It's water. And you take 2 buckets, and because we're dealing with an open wound like this, because we're dealing with neuropathy like this, you don't want to get over 100 degrees. I used to say 103, and then I had a person one time we did 103 on who had diabetic neuropathy, and it blistered the top of his foot, just 103 degrees. So I pulled it down to 100 degrees. And you don't have to have a highfalutin whirlpool like we used to have in physical therapy to do this. Just get 2 5-gallon buckets or 2 pails that you can put that in, that you can put either that one injury, or if you have both feet in the same situation, put both feet in it. And I've learned that if you do it in the bathtub, that sometimes can be easier. You just bring your chair up to the bathtub, you have your 2 buckets, you go back and forth, and you don't have to haul the water all through the house. And then if it starts to, and have the warmer water bucket near the spigot, the water spigot, and if you need to add a little more hot water, then you can do that, especially if you're doing a hotter hydrotherapy treatment. And that way you can add that warmer water right to it, and you don't have to carry water back and forth, and you can just do it yourself. So number 1 is hydrotherapy. 3 minutes warm in this situation because he has this massive wound and he has neuropathy. 3 minutes warm, 1 minute cool. 3 minutes warm, 1 minute cool. Vasodilation, vasoconstriction. Vasodilation, vasoconstriction. Increases the blood flow like you have inline pumps down in those extremities. 7 times, twice a day. You can do it 3 times a day if you'd like to. The more you do it, the better it's going to be. So 3 times is great, but at least twice a day. The next thing is we put a salve on there. And what I use in the salve is golden seal, myrrh. I've added one that I don't have here. It's called frankincense. Sound familiar? Golden seal, myrrh, frankincense. Golden seal kills any kind of infections. The myrrh, tremendous in healing tissue, but also it's good in fighting infections. Frankincense. Frankincense is, I really enjoy adding frankincense to this formula because it's another herb that God has given us that heals wounds, especially deep wounds. And then we'll put, before I do the aloe vera, I'll put some pine sap. If I don't have the pine sap, I'll use pine oil. And if I have bee propolis, I'll put some bee propolis in there. Bee propolis is phenomenal. The challenge with bee propolis is getting it locally and it not coming from somewhere that is contaminated or whatever. But bee propolis works very, very well. Germs can't grow in it. It helps the healing and improves healing much more rapidly. And then I'll add the aloe vera. And if you don't have aloe vera, you can go and as you'll see in our demonstration, we didn't have aloe vera, and so we just took an aloe vera plant, cut the leaf, stripped off the outside of it, like filleting it, chopped it up, put it in a cup, put a little bit of water, blended it up, and we had aloe vera gel. Fresh aloe vera gel, better than what you could buy from the grocery store. So everybody should have an aloe vera plant that you can bring inside in the wintertime, but aloe vera plants are very, very good, not just when you get sunburnt or when you burn yourself on a stove, but extremely good for healing wounds. And so you mix that all together and you apply that into that wound. It doesn't have to be very thick. You can just apply it there, and you then want to put a charcoal poultice. Now, before we go to the poultice, you can put honey. Honey works extremely well. If you don't have those other properties, you can put honey. Manuka honey has some really, really powerful properties in the Manuka flower, which is down in New Zealand. Those folks down there have that. But if you don't have Manuka honey, don't worry, just use the honey you have at the house. God gave us tremendous healing properties in our honey. And then you want to use a poultice. I like using a charcoal poultice. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Or a cabbage poultice, and there's different kinds, and we'll talk about both of those. But something that's very important, when you do wound care, especially extremities, they've got to stop smoking. In 16 years, I've never found a wound, an extremity wound, heal, that was a good sized wound, heal if that person still smoked. Because you've got vasoconstriction, you don't have adequate perfusion, your oxygenation is not as good, there's just many, many toxins, and we just have a hard time healing that wound. I remember I had a wound one time, a simple wound on a fellow's foot. And I mean, nothing compared to what we just saw. And I worked on it and worked on it, and it just was not healing. And I called a buddy of mine, a surgeon. We used to work together, and we talked many times each week as we worked back and forth with each other. And I said, I have this and it's not healing. Anything I'm missing? We went through what the protocol was. He said, that's it. He said, does he smoke? I go, oh no, that's it. He smokes. It's not going to work. He says, no, it's not going to work. The guy's got to quit smoking. Well, I asked the man if he quit smoking. And he said, I can't do that. And we never saw the wound heal. And so the person needs to quit smoking. And the other thing is this gentleman that we have, that we showed you that picture of, we had him juice. If it's a really bad wound, I have found the best way to just really get those nutrients to that area is to have that person juice vegetables. The kale, the spinach, the dandelion, the cabbage, the cucumbers, the beets, the carrots. And that's all he did during this 30 days was he drank vegetable juice. Very, very important. And just giving that just copious amounts of good nutrients. It reminds me of hyperalimentation, where we just go into a central line and just give them hyperal or TPN, total parental nutrition. The next one, pine sap. We talked about pine sap being in that. What's pine sap good for? It's good for wounds, gum disease, mouth sores, builds the immune system. I was giving a program like this many years ago, and a lady in the back of the room, she was an elderly lady. Listen to folks that are older than you, they got some wisdom. And she was sitting back in the corner back there, and she raised her hand and she says, can I comment on pine sap? Yes, ma'am. She says, when I was a little girl, it was before I was in school, the year was 1918. My father was a nurse. And both my brother and I would go with my father from house to house as he would treat patients at home with, what was it in 1918? The influenza. And they would go house to house. The father, the two kids, all day long, every work day, it got my attention. That was very contagious. And she said, when we got home, Dad would take a pine, they were in California, he would take a pine knot and he would put it over fire, and the heat would make pine sap drop out of it into a glass of water. And we all would drink from that glass of water. I said, how many drops, how many drops of pine sap, how much water? She says, I don't know, I was just a little girl before I was even in school. She said, but we never got sick. It boosted our immune system. And then when I moved back to Tennessee and started working with the Appalachian folks, teaching them Appalachian health, because a lot of them had lost the old mountain remedies because they started just using the drugs, eating unhealthy. And as I was teaching Appalachia, I started having people tell me, as I was teaching them about pine sap, about when they were children and before there was buses in the Appalachian Mountains, they would walk to school. And mother or grandmother would give them each morning a piece of pine rosin. It's interesting, didn't matter which community it was, they would equate it to the size of a match head. And they would chew that on the way to school. And that would boost their immune system. I have two grandchildren. I've got Kyler and I have Rebecca. And they use pine sap when they're cutting teeth. Walter or Summer will put it on Kyler's teeth, or Ashley or Tony will put it on Rebecca's gums where they're cutting through, and it works very well for cutting teeth. Pain. If you have pain in a certain area, especially in a wound, but you can put pine sap on that area. And when I put it in the wound salve, not only does it help to heal the tissue much faster, but it helps to, and pathogens won't grow in the pine sap, but also it helps with the pain. My youngest son, Carson, we had gone on a trip and he had picked up some toothpicks. And we were back home and Mary Lou was getting ready to fix dinner. That's the noon meal. And fixed dinner, and I was at work, and Carson was sitting there at the kitchen table. He dropped one on the floor and he leans over. He was 5 years old. He leans over to pick the other one up, and he falls off his chair and he jabs the other toothpick in the back of his throat. Comes up, falls again on it a second time, and he punctures the back of his throat twice. Mary Lou called and quite concerned, and so I rushed home. We put ice in this area, and then I took him to his pediatrician. I haven't left regular health care yet, allopathic health care yet, and I thought, boy, you know, it's punctured back there, it's near the spinal cord. I've got to take him to the doctor, and we need antibiotics and whatever. So I took him to the pediatrician, and she looked at it, and all she did was bring in a couple more physicians from the office and said, look at this. And she says, Walt, I can't suture that up. I can't suture that material. But here's some antibiotics or whatever. And so I took him home, and I was just starting to learn about pine sap. So I took it and I put it on a little Q-tip and just stuck it back there to try to keep him from gagging, and I just coated all back up in there. And I did it several times a day, morning, evening, and within 2 days, we had total closure. Within 4 days, you could not even see there had been a wound. Healed it very fast. Now, I know the mouth heals rapidly, but that was very rapid. We also can use it for headaches. You can mix it. It's a little sticky, and so you can mix it with a little olive oil, and it makes it less sticky, and you can put it on the forehead, and it can work fair for headaches. Activated charcoal, things that we used in this treatment that we just spoke of. I had a text this morning from home, and one of the ladies who works with us, her fiance texted and said that she had just called him. She couldn't come to work because last night she got food poisoning. So I texted back and I said, go to the office. Walter will take care of you. He will give you what you need. So I texted Walter and let him know that so-and-so's coming in and he'll be picking up some charcoal for his fiancée to take to her place because she got food poisoning last night. Everybody should keep activated charcoal just for food poisoning of itself. Indigestion, acid reflux, irritable bowel syndrome, we use it for detoxing the body. If a person has gout, you can put it in the water and in a foot bath for gout, or you can actually make a charcoal poultice that even works better. The only thing that you really have to be careful with activated charcoal is if you give it to a person within 2 hours before or after a prescription, it can nullify it. We used to use it on the ambulances. We don't use it that much anymore because what they use on the ambulances in the ER, it's not made right, and people have a propensity to aspiration, and so they're worried about it. This, you don't have to worry about the aspiration if you use it like what we're talking about. But when you use it with a medication, it will adsorb, not absorb, but adsorb that medication or pharmaceutical if you use it within 2 hours. So if you took your birth control this morning, it may not work tonight if you use it within 2 hours either side. Or if you took your Lanoxin and you have tachycardia, you may have some challenges with tachycardia later on today. So it doesn't cause an interaction, it just soaks it up, so that medication is just like you didn't take it. Charcoal poultice. I use charcoal, activated charcoal. You want a hardwood charcoal, but coconut I understand is pretty good. Flaxseed, oatmeal, psyllium seed. I like using psyllium, ground psyllium powder. Mix it well first, then add water, then roll it out between 2 pieces of plastic wrap or a t-shirt bag like you get at the grocery store, or a garbage bag. You want it about 1/4 of an inch thick, And you then, if you have more than what you're going to use, then you can store it. So I like making a larger one. If we're dealing with a problem, and let's say it's an eye infection, make it about this large, cut out a little piece like you would for cutting biscuits. To cut it out, roll it up, and stick it in the refrigerator. It'll last 7 days, 5-7 days. If you want it to last longer, put it in a Ziploc baggie, and you can put it in the freezer. If you're going to put it on an area which has a wound, I saw a wound yesterday here, and you have to be careful. If you put a charcoal poultice directly onto a wound, it can tattoo that wound. And so I don't see it as much with the psyllium as I did with the flaxseed when I used to use ground flaxseed. But just in case, take a piece of wet paper towel or a piece of cloth that's wet, and I know we have listeners all over the world. And so when I was in Venezuela, what they did down there is they put it in a piece of sheet. And then you just apply it to there and it won't tattoo. Use it for infected wounds, stings. It could be bee stings, wasp stings, bites. A number of years ago, my daughter came to me. It was on a Sunday, and she said, "Dad, look at my leg." And it was right here on her calf. It was a nasty, nasty sore. Looked like just a nasty sore. And it just did not look good. And I took her to my neighbor, who was a retired doc, and I said, "Dr. Mundy, what do you think about this?" And this is when I was still in regular health care. And he said, I said, "Do I need to take her to the ER?" And he said, no, we can take care of her here. And he says, "Virginia, get me a charcoal poultice." They freeze them ahead of time in their freezer. And so she thawed it out. And I was asking him, "Well, what is it?" He said, "Never mind what it is. We'll just put this charcoal poultice on it." So he put the charcoal poultice on it. He said, "Come back and see me tomorrow night." So, I mean, it was red and hard and hot and really looked nasty. The next evening, Monday evening, I came home early, decent time, picked up Ashley, took her over to Dr. Mundy's house, and it looked so much better. It wasn't hard, it wasn't hot, it wasn't red, it was not as angry looking. And he put another charcoal poultice on it, and I said, "Dr. Mundy, what was it?" He said, "It was a brown recluse bite. I wouldn't tell you because I knew you'd take her down to the ER and they'd cut it out and she'd have a scar for the rest of her life." She has no scar, none at all. And it stopped it. And I've helped many folks with brown recluse bites since. And what they did was they put a charcoal poultice. Now, it's not the only thing they did. I don't say they just put a charcoal poultice. No. What else did they do? What else did we do? We prayed. Because God is the one that does the healing. Don't forget that. Inflammation, gout, as we mentioned earlier, pain, cancer. I went to Michigan a number of years ago and worked with a physician in Battle Creek on how to use charcoal poultices on breast cancer, on lung cancer. They'd take them off the next morning and they just stunk terrible where they pulled. Eye infections, dental infections. You can take a charcoal poultice, roll it out, and cut a piece about the size of your little digit on your little finger and stick it inside your gum. Between your gum and between your lip and your cheek and your gum. Kind of like sticking some tobacco in there. And what they'll do is they'll hold it there against that infected area and it will pull that infection out. And change it every several hours, throw it away and put another one back. And that's why I like the psyllium powder, because it holds together. You don't need anything to hold it together. But if you don't have the psyllium powder, you can take that ground flaxseed with it, put it in a little paper towel or a little piece of material and fold it there and put it in there and hold it. And it's tremendous for pulling out the infection that's in the tooth. Infections. CDC, Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention in Atlanta, Georgia. This is what they say. Antibiotic resistance is among the CDC's top concerns. Antibiotic resistance is among the CDC's top concerns, and rightfully so. I was walking down the hallway with our medical director one day, our chief of staff, and we were walking down the hall down by patient rooms, and he said, Walt, I need to see every order that requires an antibiotic. I need to review that. I said, you know, we had many doctors there and had privileges, and I said, they're not going to like that. And I said, why? I need to know why you want this. And he said, because we are treating infections with cannons when a BB gun would work. And we're someday going to have superbugs. And he was exactly right. Antibiotic resistance. Upper respiratory infections account for 3/4 of all antibiotics prescribed by office-based physicians. Antibiotics are often used inappropriately. Now, this isn't Walt Cross talking. This is the Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention in Atlanta, Georgia talking. More than 10 million courses of antibiotics are prescribed each year for viral conditions that do not benefit from antibiotics. Why is that? Because mom goes in, or you go in and say, Doc, I got to have an antibiotic. And to keep the patient happy, to keep the customer happy, many times that physician is writing the script. The problem is, it's not going to work. Number two, you could become resistant. Infectious Disease Society of America, the losing battle against deadly bacteria is a public health concern? No, crisis. Crisis. Infections, what do? I like, first, garlic. Allicin is a component in garlic that is very, very powerful. And I like using allicin itself. It's just super, super powerful. But if you don't have allicin, use the garlic. Golden seal root, vitamin C. Vitamin C is very, very good for this, y'all. And we think, oh, that's elementary school stuff. No, it's big stuff. It really, really helps. Olive leaf extract, colloidal silver. And this is what's so important. Nutrition, manage the stress, hydrotherapy, a charcoal poultice, rest. You've got to have rest. NIH, National Institute of Health. This is that allicin that's in the garlic. Allicin is an active ingredient of garlic that has antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, antiprotozoal activity. Allicin exhibits various biological properties like antimicrobial, anti-cancer, antioxidant, immunomodulatory, anti-inflammatory, hypoglycemic, and cardiovascular effects. It is super, super powerful. Just one drop of allicin takes 24 cloves of garlic to make that one drop. A teaspoon of allicin that we use for MRSA is 2,880 cloves of garlic. We'll talk about that in a moment. Oh, let's talk right now. MRSA. In 10 years, I haven't seen one case of MRSA not wiped out with allicin. We used to use a drug called vancomycin. And I remember when I left allopathic care, I prayed. I said, God, show me something. Because MRSA was growing and growing and growing. And we were using an IV drug called vancomycin. And it didn't always work. And it was very powerful and tough on the body. And I said, God, I know you've got something. Show me. And God showed me allicin. And you take a teaspoon of that twice a day for 3 months, it wipes it out. And I work with physicians all over the United States who's using allicin for MRSA. It also works, not as effective, but it does work for VRSA, vancomycin-resistant Staph aureus. MRSA is methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, and then the VRSA is when that staph infection's resistant to even the vancomycin. H. pylori, C. difficile, E. coli, the common cold, irritable bowel syndrome, dysentery, salmonella, diverticulitis, parasites, and it even lowers cholesterol, and it lowers blood pressure. Amazing. The immune system, and when we work with the immune system, and that's a challenge out there, y'all. People are just wiping out their immune system. And what do? They take drugs that can even wipe out their immune system. what do you do for the immune system? Number one, there's three things. Number one, no sugar. Sugar just plumb wipes out your immune system. Did you know that one 12-ounce soft drink, on average, will wipe out your immune system? We're talking a 12-ounce soft drink, will wipe out your immune system 50% for the next 4 hours. 50% for the next 4 hours. A milkshake will wipe out your immune system right at around 93 to 94% for the next 4 hours. Now, let's say you take that Dr. Pepper and that Snickers bar, like what I used to do. I used to go and tour when I worked in healthcare. I'd drive back and forth across the state teaching, and I would stop in and get gas, and I might even not even get gas. I'd stop in and get my Dr. Pepper and my Snickers bar. And I'd get back in the car and take off. For the next 4 hours, only 1/14th of my immune system was battling. And then I get to my meeting, shake folks' hands. The guy just rubbed his nose, he's got a cold, and then I shake his hand and I pick something up and eat it, boom. My immune system was wiped out. It wasn't able to do what it needed to do. Sugar is tremendous. So we think about Old Mountain Remedies, apple pie, cobblers. They're good, but they're going to wipe out your immune system. The next one is rest. Lack of sleep. Sleep deprivation is significant on wiping out your immune system. We've learned that the hours before midnight are worth twice the hours after midnight in sleep. And the third one is stress. 1 minute of stress. We'll talk about this in this series later about stress. How do you address stress naturally? But did you know that just 1 minute of stress significantly wipes out your immune system for up to 6 hours? Amazing. So you're driving down the road and someone pulls out in front of you and you get all upset and boom, you wiped out your immune system. Or you're on the phone call and a customer calls you and they're just blasting you out and you blast them back, boom, your immune system's gone for the next 6 hours. Or maybe you get into a confrontation at home. Boom, your immune system's wiped out for up to 6 hours. Stress, terrible. Another one that we're looking at today that we're learning more and more and more about is vitamin D. If you have a low vitamin D, you're probably going to have a low immune system. I have a friend, he's a physician, and he's been monitoring vitamin D for about 15 years now. And he tells me that every patient that comes in that is a sickly person, he checks their vitamin D. He also checks the other folks, and he can find a direct relationship between their immune system and their vitamin D level. If they have a good immune system, he says their vitamin D is better. When they have a low immune system, he says they have a low vitamin D level. We used to think you wanted a vitamin D level of 32. Well, you really need a vitamin D level. They say between 30 and 100, go for the 100. It's going to boost your immune system so much more. If you've got cancer, if you've got a major health issue that you need an immune system to do its job, get that vitamin D up there. Be aggressive doing that. Good nutrition again, exercise, universal precautions. Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. You're at the grocery store and you're over there picking your apples and your bananas and you're going through the strawberries and you're picking strawberries and you're over here now looking at your bananas and this lady's up beside you and she's sneezing and coughing and she's right there with you. Well, just come on back over here a minute and start working on these guys. Let her just cough and sneeze over there. Don't put yourself in that situation. Don't go up to those folks and get that. But washing your hands is so, so very important. Before you eat, after you eat, there's many times you want to wash your hands. Oil of oregano. It's probably my favorite for that initial attack. If I feel like something's getting a little stuffy or getting a little in the head, or I feel something in here, or I feel like someone's sitting on my chest, I have oil of oregano at the office, in my car, and on my headboard. And so as soon as I feel any kind of anything, immediately in the incipient stage, when it's just beginning, use oil of oregano. 5 drops. Put it under your tongue, hold it for 2 minutes, and then swallow it. You might need some water to chase it. If it's too hard at first, mix it with some water. You want it mixed to 25% oil of oregano, 75% olive oil. You don't want 100% oil of oregano doing this. Mix it. And then, if it's still there in 2 hours, do it again, but it will wipe it out. But you've got to get it in the incipient stage. Garlic, again, very, very important. Allicin, padiarco, red clover, echinacea, golden seal. Golden seal's, well, even echinacea. Echinacea, you can use it for about 2 weeks, and then you want to stop. You can swap it off with something else. Go 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. But you don't want to use echinacea for long periods because research shows that it starts declining in efficacy. Golden seal is the same way. But with golden seal, you don't want to use it even long term. Even if you're skipping every other week, it can lead to depression issues. So I use golden seal. It's a big gun in my arsenal, but I use it for a short period of time. I don't use it long term. Elderberry, the top herbalist in the world, the top herbalist in the world. If they had a choice on a pandemic event, it is elderberry. There's a lady who wrote many books on health prevention and caring for health. And when she would move, she would have them plant an elderberry bush or elderberry bushes where she lived because she knew that this was so, so important for the immune system. Vitamin C in olive leaf extract. Olive leaf is an excellent antiviral. How do we treat boils? Well, we talked earlier about a charcoal poultice, but I want to get a little more. I've never lived anywhere, and I've worked all over the Southeast. I've never worked anywhere that I haven't seen as many boils as where I live now. It's amazing. So many people come in, men and women, mostly men, but a lot of even women come in with boils on their backs, on their legs, on their trunks, on their arms. The first thing that we want to do is we want to clean their blood. Clean their blood. Why is their blood nasty? It's what they're eating. They don't have a good diet where I live. They've got the Appalachian diet. And so you got to clean that blood. And so this is what I use. Chaparral's my favorite. If you're down in the high desert of California or Arizona, it grows right there. Chaparral, use the capsules. It's pretty nasty tasting if you use the tea. It'll work, but it's kind of nasty. The capsules are a little easier. Burdock root. The old mountain folks in the mountains where I live, in the Appalachia, the old men use burdock for boils. They've known that for generations. Red clover, another good one. Red clover is one that we really should drink every day. That same author I was speaking of a few minutes ago, she actually recommended that we drink red clover every day. The charcoal poultice, and again, remember, if you've got a bowl, and if it's open, you've got to put a barrier. If you want to speed it up, if you want to speed that boil to come to a head faster so that the pain is not as bad, put some tea tree oil on there. And that will speed that process up, that boil will come to a head faster. And when you use the charcoal poultice, it's not going to be a big hard knot like normal. It's going to, you know how a boil is? It has that hard knot in there and it displaces the tissue and it's more prone to scar. Well, when you use the charcoal poultice, one, the pain goes away within a few minutes. And when the pain starts coming back, that means it's drawn all it can do. Put another charcoal poultice on it. But when it does erupt, it erupts like a volcano. And you don't have that hard core, so you don't have as bad of a scar many times. The allicin, again, helps to fight any infection. Nutrition's important. Drinking water. Again, we've got a blood issue here. Water's very important. Nutrition's very important for cleaning that blood. Insomnia. As I work with folks, insomnia is a lot. And folks say, as I sit down with them and as I look at their health history and as I look at their lifestyle, and I'll say, what time do you go to bed? I don't just say, what time do you go to bed? I say, what time do you fall asleep? What time do you wake up in the morning? And how good's your quality of sleep through the night? And I'm seeing so many people tell me, well, I go to bed at this time, but it takes me an hour, 2, even 3 hours to fall asleep. They toss and turn and toss and turn. Or if they do wake up, or if they do go to sleep, then they wake up in the night multiple times. And it may be because they need to go to the bathroom because they have prostate issues or they have pain, but it can be they can't sleep very well. So what do? Valerian, valerian, hops, skullcap, passion flower, they're great for that. When 9/11 came, I was working just outside of Washington, D.C., and the patients would come in we had a lot of patients from New York City. We had a lot of patients come in from Washington, D.C. These people couldn't fall asleep. They could not fall asleep consistently. For about a 6-month period, we were dealing with this. So I called a good buddy of mine, Dr. Walter Strachan, a psychiatrist, a good psychiatrist, the last 14 years of his career. He never prescribed one pharmaceutical, he used herbs. And I called Dr. Strachan and I said, what can I do? And he said, Walt, he said, give them valerian, skullcap, and hops, 2 tablespoons and 2 cups of water, make a tea, give it to them an hour before bedtime. He said it always works. If a woman's husband dies and she's hysteric, it always has worked for me. I said, good, we'll do it. So we did it. It didn't work. So I called Dr. Strachan the next day and I said, Dr. Strachan, it's not working. He says, what? Very, very humble fella. Very, very good fella. And he said, what happened? I said, I don't know, it just didn't work. He said, well, back it up. Give it at 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock, the same amount. 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock. The next day I called him, it didn't work. He said, back it up 4, 6, and 8. It didn't work. I called him again and I said, Dr. Strachan, it's not working. He said, these people are fractured. He said, just keep backing it up every 2 hours. And what finally worked is giving it to the folks 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 8 o'clock. And every one of them that we had for that 6-month period, as the patients would come in, it took that much to put them asleep. I've only seen that one other time, and it was a lady who was in surgery, and they gave her the wrong anesthetic. It caused significant brain damage, and she had the same problem. Magnesium is another one that I'm using more and more. You can just take a Epsom salt bath. That's magnesium. Or you can take magnesium by mouth. Or what Mary Lou will do sometimes is she'll take some magnesium oil and give me a back rub. That's a good excuse for a back rub, huh? And so she'll spray some magnesium oil or some magnesium cream, and it transdermally goes through, and I go right to sleep. Chamomile. Another one is light to no supper. What happens is when we eat supper, it has a propensity to putrefy and to ferment in the digestive system. And then as it goes on through into the duodenum, it's soaked up through the villi, up into the blood, fermented and putrefied nutrients. And that can cause, and that goes to the brain, and that can mess with sleeping. And so you want a light supper. Plus, if you eat a large supper, remember I talked about sunshine, the importance of sunshine. So when you eat your flaxseed for breakfast and you eat your flaxseed for dinner, and then the sunshine stimulates the pineal gland to convert that tryptophan in the flaxseed to serotonin. Well, at night, when you go to bed on time, and if you did not eat a big supper, you then convert, the pineal gland then converts the serotonin to melatonin. But if you eat a large supper, you don't convert and have as much melatonin production. Tryptophan, you can take tryptophan. B complex is good to calm the nerves. A lot of folks can't go to sleep because they just can't shut this off. And you want that sunshine to have that conversion of the tryptophan, and then which eventually gives you the melatonin. Stress. We'll talk about this in a whole segment in this series. Stress is huge. Why do I talk about stress so much? Because it is the #1 diagnosis in the United States. And I'd venture to say every first world country. Stress is huge. How do we address stress? Rest. You got to get your rest. And I know I talked about those 8 laws of health, but I'm sticking some of them in here because I don't want you to forget them. Rest is huge for stress. Nutrition, having adequate nutrients going to the brain. What do you want to feed your brain? Stress is a brain thing. Do you want Twinkies feeding your brain? Or do you want an apple and an orange and kale feeding your brain? Because if you've got a Twinkie brain, you're going to have stress. Water. Our brain needs to be, as I said before, 85% water. If you're dehydrated, you're significantly more prone to stress. Exercise. Stress raises cortisol. Then what happens is exercise lowers the cortisol. I had a lady come in one time, and it was a Friday morning, mid-morning, and I was working. Mary Lou was up on the mountain doing homeschool with our 3 kids. It's been a few years ago. And I was there, and there's a lot of folks in there waiting for me to take care of them at work. And this lady walks in, and she was dressed like a gypsy, very strange. She had something glued to her forehead, and her hair was real weird up in something. And she walks around, and she comes right behind the counter where I was working and stands right here. "You, Walt?" "Yes, ma'am." She says, "Someone said that you could help me. I need help." She looked like a whooped dog. And I said, "Ma'am," I said, "I'm by myself today. We close early on Fridays. But Monday morning, you come here Monday morning, I'll help you, 8 o'clock. We open at 10. Back then we opened at 10. I said, "You be here at 8 o'clock and I'll help you." She said, "I'll be here." She says, "I'll be the worst case you've ever dealt with." She walked out the door, and our mouths just dropped, every one of us. What just walked in here? Monday morning she was there, and we sat down, and I start going through her health history. She'd been to psychiatry, she'd been to a psychologist. The psychiatrist had given her drugs, they didn't work. The psychologist had recommended things, that didn't work. And she started telling me some things, and she said, "I need to tell you something." I said, "What's that?" She says, "I can make things levitate. Do you believe me?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." Well, you know what I did? I started praying. And then she started on. And I said, we were talking about health issues and whatever, and she says, "I need to tell you something else." I said, "What's that?" She says, "That O'Reilly's Auto Parts place across the street, that brand new place across the street," she said, "I can tell you where everything is in that store, and I've never been in there. Do you believe me?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." So it was very evident what we were dealing with here. And so I started changing my questioning, my line of questioning. And I started talking about the importance of the brain working well, that we had to address that, and started talking about improving her brain function. And then I mentioned a word that she started shaking like you took a hot stick and stuck to somebody with. You know what you use a cattle prod to move the cows? I mean, she just started shaking. And I said, "What is it?" She says, "They don't like it." Not it, not he, but they. Multiple. They don't like it. Do you know what I said? I mentioned the word Jesus. And she started shaking. I could talk about God. She was uncomfortable. But every time I said Jesus' name, she would shake. So we spent some time talking, and I said, "Okay." I said, "Ma'am, your problem is not that you need drugs. Ma'am, you're possessed by the devil." And we talked about how the devil was communicating with her through her mind, and she had to get control. She was being picked up at night. I confirmed this later with her husband. She was being picked up at night and thrown against the wall by demons and other stuff I'd never even heard about. And he confirmed it. I said, "We've got to get your brain working so they don't bother you." I want you to do a few things for me. And I want you to come back next Monday, a week away, and I want to see how you're doing. I said, number one, you got to eat healthy. No refined foods. I want you to take B-complex each meal. I want you to use flaxseed. I want you to use trace minerals. But the most important thing I want you to do is every time they start to talk to you, I want you to say, in Jesus' name, Satan, get thee behind me. I said, I don't care if you say it 20 minutes. You just keep saying it until they quit talking to you, because they just talk to her all the time. She says, okay. She says, I've got to do something. I can't live like this. And as I walked out to where she was getting ready to leave, I remembered that someone had just come in a week before and given me a white Gideon New Testament. I said, ma'am, I want you to take this and I want you to read this between now and next week as much as you can. And she left. That next Monday she was there. She walked in and she looked like a whole new person. Now she's still dressed weird. But her countenance, she didn't look like that whooped dog. And she came in and I said, and she was smiling. And I said, how are you doing? She said, I'm doing so much better. I said, what'd you do? She said, I'm doing what you told me. I say that, and they don't bother me. And I said, did you read that little book I gave you? She said, yes. She said, I especially like those first 4 books in that book. Especially meant she'd read more than the first 4 books in that book. I said, why'd you like them first 4 books? She says, because it talks about Jesus. She did not shake. And she could talk about Jesus, and she did not shake. And how did she control? Yes, she addressed the brain so that the Holy Spirit could talk to her and so that it was stronger. Interesting, I was telling her about flaxseed helps to increase serotonin. And she told me that the demons had told her to take certain things, certain drugs, that they told her would lower her serotonin level. Interesting, huh? Satan knows physiology. And he told her that's what he wanted her to do. And she knew about it. But she built that serotonin back up with the flaxseed and the sunshine. Trust in God. It's huge. If you want to address stress, you think you got a bad time? Look at that lady. So when you are stressed, it's bills or whatever it is, you ask God to take care of it for you. B-complex, I mentioned that earlier, phenomenal. Lithium orotate, very, very good for stress. Flaxseed, kava kava, chamomile, hops, skullcap, valerian. Now these guys here, chamomile, hops, skullcap, and valerian, they're great at night. Don't use them during the daytime. They kind of make you a little sleepy. They're great. Remember, that's the kind of stuff we use to put them folks to sleep. They're great to calm the nerves. Use them at night when you're not working. Kava doesn't seem to cause the problem. Trace minerals will work very well. Trace minerals are very important. Magnesium and classical music will also help. What do we do for bleeding? If a person cuts themselves, a lot of folks are concerned when they move to the country. What am I going to do if I get hurt? And if I cut myself, you know, you got wounds, you got just bleeding, what do I do? Well, direct pressure and elevation. And when you put direct pressure on there, don't every once in a while say, well, how's it looking? And you pull the dressing off. No, that's going to rip that apart that just coagulated and it's going to start bleeding again. Put a dressing on there. And if it bleeds through it, don't take that one off to put another one on, just keep building them on there. And cayenne pepper, I would do that first. Put some cayenne pepper on there. That's excellent for cauterizing. Comfrey root or comfrey leaf, European goldenrod, shave grass, they're good for bleeding. How about bleeding fibroids? Yarrow, red raspberry, shepherd's purse are tremendous. I was at church one day and I get a call from one of my firefighters and she said, Chief, she said, I called her when I got out of church and I said, Cassie, what's wrong? And she said, it's like I'm like the woman with an issue of blood. It won't stop. It won't stop. I said, I'll meet you back at the office in an hour. And so I met her back at the office. I gave her some shepherd's purse. It's Sabbath, and I didn't sell it to her. I gave it to her, and I said, go home. Here's how to use it. She calls me on Sunday, and she says, it worked. I've got so much energy back. It stopped bleeding. Works very well. Ladies' mantle, crane's bill. How about a nosebleed? Raise the arm above the head, cayenne in dissolved hot water, drink it. Or you can actually spritz it up in the nose. Extract of witch hazel. And another thing that I recently learned about nosebleeds is a calcium deficiency. A calcium deficiency can make the vessels in the nose more prone to rupture. Bleeding ulcers. Start with 1/4 of a teaspoon 3 times a day and work up to a teaspoon 3 times a day in some water. Great for stomach ulcers, ulcerative colitis, ulcerative proctitis. Works quite well. Burns. There's different kinds of burns. There are thermal burns, cold temperature burns, electrical burns, chemical burns, radiation burns, friction burns. How do we treat them? It depends on the degree. You've got first degree. That's what we used to call them. They have new words now, but most of y'all recognize this. First degree burns of the first layer of skin, second degree superficial or partial thickness burn injuries, the first and second layers of the skin. Then there's deep partial thickness burns or injures deeper skin layers. Third degree burns or full thickness burns, now call it, injure all the skin layers and tissue under the skin. Then there's fourth degree burns extend through the skin into the injured muscle, ligaments, tendons, nerves, blood vessels, and even into the bones. What do? The first thing you want to do is cool the burn. Unless it's a chemical burn, you want to get that chemical off first, dust it off. You want to cool it. Place it in running water for 10 to 15 minutes or until the pain stops. At least. I would rather see it go on even longer if you can. Lavender essential oil is excellent for burns. Aloe vera, grated potato, works very well. Burdock root, comfrey, honey works very well. And then there's something that comes from turpentine. It's called suppentine. And I believe it's how they pronounce it, suppentine. And that works phenomenal for helping with burns. Colloidal silver, calendula or calendula, chickweed, bee propolis, golden seal, marshmallow root. Again, don't forget honey. God gave us honey, and I'm worried about our honey. I really am. Because we're seeing our bees dying off, and if we lose our bees, it's not just not having it on our food, it's pollination. You won't have food if you don't have bees pollinate. Some foods, like almonds, are totally 100% dependent on bee pollination. You want to cover the burn with a sterile dressing. Use something for the pain. I like wild lettuce, California poppy, Jamaican dogwood are great painkillers. They're herbs. Watch for signs of infection though. You want to be very careful for infection and burns. If you have a blister, don't burst it. Don't burst the blister because you're going to expose it to the area and it's going to hurt more. Don't use ice. I'm going to say that again. Don't use ice or ice. And also don't use ointments that hold the temperature in. This is an old mountain remedy that I don't recommend. Years ago, the mountain folks, if you had a burn, they would put Crisco shortening on it. That just holds the temperature in. Don't do something like that. Third degree and fourth degree burns, don't remove their burned clothing, but be sure the clothing isn't still on fire. Don't immerse large severe burns in cold water. Not just ice, but don't even, if they have a lot of burns to the area, don't immerse into that large area into cold water. That can be very dangerous. They can get hypothermia. It can lower the blood pressure. It can also cause shock. You want to elevate the burn parts or part to the above the body, above the heart, that part above the heart. You want to cover the burned area with cool, moist, sterile dressing, clothes or towels, that type of thing. Mouth sores. Mouth sores, I'll do the first at the bottom first. Look to see what the problem is. Many times mouth sores are digestive problems. Do they have problems in the stomach, in the intestines? Many times that's where mouth sores start from. Now it could be because they're dipping, or they're smoking a pipe, or it could be, you know, something like that, a tobacco-related item. Pine sap works well for mouth sores. If they have a sore, put some pine sap on it. Aloe vera, golden seal, myrrh powder, bee propolis. We talked about activated charcoal before. And one that I use for a lot is just put some salt on there, sea salt, and that works quite well. It burns a little bit, but it works well. But I probably use pine sap the most now. But you want to investigate it. Here's an illustration. I'm rubbing my arm with a piece of sandpaper. And you come up to me and you say, honey, you need to put some aloe vera on that. It's just terrible off. Oh, I know, it's bleeding and look at that nasty wound. And so I stopped using the sandpaper and you put some aloe vera on it for me. And I just start rubbing it again, and next time you come see me, I'm still rubbing it and it's nasty. And you say, let me put some more aloe vera on it. Sure, please, it sure needs it. Thank you. And then I start putting more, I start rubbing it again. Unless you get rid of the cause, it's not going to go away. You've got, the cure is in the cause. So if you've got mouth sores, just putting pine sap on it, you've also got to address the underlying cause. And many times, that's a digestive issue. So do some research there. Gum disease, golden seal root, myrrh gum powder. You can make teas and swish with those. Pine sap, bee propolis, black walnut, barberry, calendula, comfrey. Something else you want to do if there's gum disease is you want to make sure you're flossing. Make sure you're flossing those teeth, very important. And also make sure you are, when you brush your teeth, also brush your gums. Massage your gums. That will increase vascular flow, more blood flow. That will help more oxygen, more nutrients, more blood to that area to help heal it faster. So brush those gums about 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Each, at least once a day if you have gum disease. A toothache. Clove oil is probably what I see folks using the most. It's great to use. Be careful not to get it on the tongue. It can make that kind of numb also. We talked about clove oil, and we're going to talk about it in one of our classes. Charcoal poultice or a charcoal tablet. Golden seal, myrrh powder, and horsetail. If I have a toothache, what I'll do is I'll take a teaspoon of golden seal, a teaspoon of myrrh, and sometimes I'll put the horsetail in it, and make a tea of it. And then I'll take it and I'll swish for about 2 minutes, and I'll swallow it. And do that every 2 hours. It's amazing how quick that toothache will go away. See, I'm getting that down into that gum where that infection is. Pine sap is also very good. I'll put that in between times that I'm doing the golden seal and myrrh. The calendula, the chamomile, ginger, and caraway. What about strep throat? Strep throat is something we see quite a bit in the wintertime where I live. And it's so simple. Take 1 teaspoon of golden seal, put it in a cup of water, make a tea of it, and you'll take enough of a swallow that you can gargle. Not too much, but enough that you can do a decent gargle. Kind of, like when you gargle with salt water. Well, take enough that you can gargle. Gargle for 2 minutes. And then swallow it. Every 2 hours. Waking 2 hours. If you wake up in the middle of the night, it's bothering you, have that by your bed and take another gargle for 2 minutes and swallow it. And normally within 24 hours that strep throat is gone. Colloidal silver, allicin also are very good for strep throat. A sore throat, lemon and honey. You can take, mix that lemon and honey. You can actually take an onion and kind of core it out. Don't go too deep. And pour in some honey, put it in a pot with about 1 inch of warm water and simmer it for about 20 minutes. That onion will come into it, and then you can use that. That works really well. Golden seal, propolis, salt water, colloidal silver. You can do hydrotherapy, and that's where you take a handkerchief and you dip that handkerchief down in ice water, and then you squeeze it out, fold it about 2 inches by the length of the handkerchief, put it around the neck, put a pin on it, and then put a sock around your neck, like a wool sock or one of those tube socks. And that works really well. That coldness is going to bring more blood to the area, and because it's trying to warm it up. And another one that I also like using is slippery elm. You can take either slippery elm lozenges that you can make your own, or you can take a teaspoon and put it into a cup of water, make a little tea, and every little bit just take it and kind of let it slow down, go down your throat slow. And that slippery elm is also good to help to treat that sore throat. Ear infections. We were on the way to Nashville to pick up my oldest son from the airport. He was flying in, and we got to Nashville, and Mary Lou started saying, my ears really, really bother me. And by the time we got to Lebanon, she was crying. She says, it's really hurting. And so we pulled off there at Lebanon off I-40, and I went into a Walmart, and I got a bottle of Golden Seal capsules in the pharmacy section. And then I went and got the smallest bottle of olive oil. And then I went by a little gas station and asked them if I could get just one spoon, a little plastic spoon. And what I did is I took that spoon and I filled it about 70% full of olive oil. And then I added enough Goldens, opened the capsule, and I put it in there and stirred it around where it was about the thickness, viscosity of motor oil. As thick as I could that it would still drip. And I took and I put 3 drops in her ear, and I rubbed it kind of like you'd rub something down a dog's ear, and got it down in there. And then we did it again once we got to Crossville. By the time we got back to Knoxville, she said the pain was almost gone. She wasn't crying anymore. By the time we got back home, the ear infection, that pain was significantly better. So Golden Seal olive oil or just garlic oil. The allicin also is good here. Also, I bought at Walmart, I bought those little things, you know those things when you go hunting, and well, I don't go hunting, but the fellas go hunting, and they put it in their pocket and they break it and it makes heat. Well, that little square thing, you can put that on the ear. And so I put that on there too. The heat is also good for it. You can take a light bulb, an incandescent light bulb, and that's getting harder and harder because they don't make them here in the United States anymore. But you take a 100-watt light bulb and you hold it out from the ear, and that can use heat. Remember a guy by the name of John Harvey Kellogg? He found the incandescent light. Remember he had a light box? Incandescent light actually penetrated deeper within his patients, deeper into the body than hydrotherapy did. So incandescent light is a very powerful tool for using. Candling, using an ear candle, and that can also work quite well. Eye care, let's look at a scratch. If a person gets a scratch on their eye, you've got to be careful. I had a guy come in one time, and he was working in the shop, and he was standing maybe 20 feet away from when they were using a table saw, and a piece of wood came flying across the shop, and it got in his eye. And he was, it was really bothering him. So he came in to our clinic, and he said, I need someone to take me to the hospital. I said, well, let me look at it. So we looked at it, and I said, okay, we'll get somebody for you. and you know, it wasn't a significant emergency, but he was definitely uncomfortable. So I went and got some vitamin E oil, and I just poured it in his eye. And we were getting ready to take him, and he said, I don't think I need to go to the emergency room now. He says, my eye feels so much better. I'd learned that because one time I was cutting some tile, and I forgot to put my goggles on between cutting a piece, and a piece of tile came up and it cut my eye. And I'd used the flaxseed, and that didn't seem to work as well. It's a treatment. But I had someone tell me, try vitamin E. And I put that in there, and it just soothed it so much better, and it healed it much, much more rapidly. So vitamin E oil, you can put a piece of flaxseed in there. That can help. If there's an eye infection, there's several things that cause eye infections. There can be a virus, it can be a bacteria, it can be fungus, allergies, or other irritants. It could be a buildup of bacteria on contact lenses for people who don't change their contacts, take them out like they should or clean them like they should. So what do we do? There's ocular histoplasmosis, sexual transmitted infections, shingles, inflammation of the cornea, Lyme disease, tuberculosis, crab lice. Ocular histoplasmosis is a fungal infection of the lungs that can travel to the eyes. Approximately 90% of the individuals living in the southeastern United States have developed this specific type of infection. Sexually transmitted infections, STDs, chlamydia, gonorrhea, herpes. You can get eye infections from those. Treatments, you can use a charcoal poultice, a flaxseed poultice. I like golden seal washes, very, very well, golden seal washes. You make a golden seal tea, take a teaspoon of golden seal into a cup of water, make a tea, and then pour it through. Anytime you make a tea that you're going to put the liquid into the eye, I like using a coffee filter. Again, I don't use coffee, but that coffee filter is just very fine, and it's a very good filter to keep that from, or you can use multiple pieces of paper towels if you don't have that. Boric acid, chamomile, again honey. Honey is excellent. Jasmine flowers. And you can actually put allicin in the eye, the allicin liquid in the eye for an eye infection. Saline solution, if the person has pink eye, as a boy on the farm, sometimes you'd buy a herd or get some cows in and then identify that you had pink eye. And what Dad would do, he would walk up to old number 53 and catch her not looking, and he'd have some salt and he'd toss it in her eye and he'd get rid of it. Well, you don't do that to people. Saline solution works well. And how do you make normal saline? You take a pint of water, add a teaspoon of sea salt to it, and now you've made saline solution. A pint of water, a teaspoon of salt will make saline solution. Shake it up good and make sure the salt dissolves. Charcoal poultice, another one is raw milk. It can be human milk, it can be goat milk, it can be cow milk, but it has to be raw. And as I've talked with ladies who are from Africa, from the Caribbean, or even ladies back up in the rural Appalachia, what they'll do is every day in the first 3 months of the child's life, they will squirt some breast milk in each eye, and that will prevent the eyes from getting infected. A golden seal wash is also good for pink eye. I've used that a number of times. Periwinkle, the white periwinkle, or you can use lemon in the morning, honey at night. Now, why did I say lemon in the morning and honey at night? It doesn't really matter, but the honey doesn't sting as bad as the lemon does, but it works well. Eye infections, prevention, hand washing, very important. Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. Don't share bedding, towels, pillows, cosmetics, eyeliner, mascara, eyeshadow with a person that has eye infections. I don't do that anyway, but dispose of any contact or eye makeup that may have been exposed to the infections. As I work with people coming in and they have eye infections, I'll tell them don't wear any makeup for 2 weeks. Don't wear contacts or eye makeup until the infection has cleared from the eye completely. So they need to not wear their contacts, put some glasses on and use those if possible. We need to clear that infection up. Prevention, avoid swimming in chlorine when you have an eye infection. Let's talk about pain. What do you do when you have pain? Is there any remedies, Old Mountain remedies for pain? Water. Water is a tremendous cure for pain. I encourage you to read the book, Your Body's Many Cries for Water from Dr. Batman Jyoti. Wild lettuce tea is phenomenal for pain. We use, even for patients with bone cancer, we were able to have good success with using wild lettuce tea. California poppy, Jamaican dogwood, all of these that you make teas with. And what you do is you take a quart of water, and you can take anywhere from a half a cup to a cup of the herb, make a tea, and drink 1 cup every 2 hours. Waking hours, that is. And if that works well, then go to every 3 hours. If that works well, you go to every 4 hours. It's called least dosing, the least amount that works. No sense in wasting your money or wasting it. Use the least that does the job. Turmeric. Turmeric has a chemical in it called curcumin. And curcumin is excellent for pain. Exercise. Did you know that exercising is good for pain? It is. It does. Ice massage. And what you do with an ice massage is you take a cup, paper cup or a plastic cup, excuse me, a styrofoam cup, and tear off the top 1 inch of the cup. Let me back up. You'll fill it full of water, you'll put it in the freezer, you'll bring it out, and now it's solid with ice. You'll tear off that piece and then put a little water on it because it's kind of sticky because it's frozen. But put a little water on it, and then you'll take that area and you'll rub it kind of briskly on that shoulder if it's got some pain, and it becomes numb. Starts to sting, and then it plumb comes numb. And you stop when it becomes numb, and that works well. Dr. Agatha Thrash told me one time, she said, if you want to suture somebody that needs sutured, you get everything sutured up first. Get your needle, get your suture material all ready, clean the area, and then you take ice, and you put ice on the area you're getting ready to suture for 4 minutes. Now, immediately start suturing. She said you should have 4 minutes of suturing. When the pain starts, the numbness starts wearing off, she said, stop, put that ice back on there, around the edges. And she said that will help with being able to suture that area if you don't have any anesthetics for that. She said if that doesn't work, then use 4 strong men. Hydrotherapy is good for pain. White willow, well, that's what aspirin came from. DMSO, cayenne. And what you do for cayenne is I will take some lotion, a little lotion, put some cayenne powder in there, and you test it to the back of your hand. If it's warm and feels like it's kind of warm, that'll work. If it's too warm, just add a little more lotion. If it's not warm enough, add more cayenne powder. Not all cayenne is the same. You've got some cayenne that you buy in the store might be 20,000 HUs, heating units, HUs. It may be 100,000, 80,000, 160,000, 180,000. 2.1 million is the hottest cayenne I've ever found. 160,000 HUs, I actually have to wear a mask and gloves. It's so strong. But cayenne gets the attention of the nerves and it distracts them. And so cayenne can help. Pine sap, as we mentioned earlier, can help with pain. How about angina? Is there a natural remedy, an Old Mountain remedy for angina? Angina is that pain they get in their chest when they're having problems. They think they're getting ready to have a heart attack. What's happening is you have you're having that constriction or that blockage where you don't have adequate blood oxygen going to the heart. And so people use a drug called nitroglycerin as a vasodilator. Well, we found that cayenne pepper, I have people who use it instead of nitroglycerin because they say it works better than the nitroglycerin for their angina. And it's a vasodilator. It helps to open it up. Magnesium oil. I have a good friend, he's a doctor, that he will use magnesium oil. And he'll have his patients spray magnesium oil from the clavicle down to the base of the rib cage, to the right side of the sternum, to over here on this side of the rib cage 3 times a day. And if they start to have some angina, they'll spray some more on there, and it helps. That magnesium helps the heart. Arnica is another thing that can help with angina. Food poisoning. We talked about that a few minutes ago. Food poisoning, the best thing in the world that I have found is activated charcoal. Take your big old tablespoon and put it in there, 2 tablespoons. Stir it in there, drink it. If you don't like the taste of it, if you hadn't had activated charcoal, it tastes like dirt. Use a straw, and that kind of throws it back in your mouth and doesn't bother you as much. You may want to brush your teeth afterwards. But activated charcoal works tremendously for food poison. A stomach ache. What do you do for stomach aches? And again, if you do these laws of health, a lot of times you aren't going to have these problems to start with. But what do you do for a stomach ache? Yes, you can use activated charcoal. You can use peppermint tea. That's a great one. Ginger root is another good one for upset stomach. Aloe vera. I really like aloe vera. I'm more and more finding aloe vera is very good for just many things in our body, from fighting cancer to, again, that sunburn. Lobelia can help with a stomach ache. Now, lobelia is an antispasmodic if you use the right amount. And usually that's 30 drops for an adult. If you use too much, it's a spasmodic and you're going to throw it up. Yellow root. Yellow root is something that grows in the mountains of Appalachia. They call it yellow root. And yellow root it grows along the creek beds and the stream beds. It's a Siamese twin to golden seal. Not exactly, but very similar to golden seal. And the old mountain people in the Appalachia will take that yellow root, or you can go over to Cherokee, North Carolina, and those Cherokee Indians will sell you sticks of yellow root about that long and tied up like a bundle of wood. It's smaller than a pencil, but it's all tied up. And the Cherokee Indians will take that and they'll chew on it if they have a stomach ache. Or you can make a tea of it. Works very well. How about irritable bowel syndrome? IBS is a huge problem, especially in the countries that have the new wheat. See, the old wheat had 16 chromosomes. The new wheat has 42 chromosomes. Do you know what thermography is? Thermography is where you can look at your gums, you can look at various parts of the body and look at temperature. Well, they have found that the colon is inflamed. They can see it with thermography. And they tell me, the people who read these thermography scans, that it takes 1 year after a person quits using the new wheat that the colon is not inflamed. So if I eat a piece of bread today, some toast for breakfast, it will take, according to these people, it takes 1 year of me being totally abstinent of the new wheat until they can't pick up my colon's inflamed. Isn't that amazing? I have a good friend. He's a physician, internist, and he has a patient she lives in America, but she's from England. She has a very challenging problem with gluten, with wheat. And so she's gluten-free. But she went home to England just recently, and she could eat cookies and cakes, and she doesn't understand the health issues that we understand here tonight. But cookies and cakes and bread and whatever, had no problem. None. The whole month she was in England. Wheat didn't bother her. She came back to the United States and she told her physician that she took just a pinch of the American bread, the 42 chromosome bread. Ate it. She ended up going to the emergency room with respiratory distress. Why? Great Britain, according to her, Great Britain had said no to Monsanto. You're not going to bring your wheat over here. So depending on where you are living in the world, you might be in I know we have listeners all over the world listening right now, but you may be in a country that doesn't have the new wheat. Feel yourself blessed. But if you've got that new tainted wheat that is up to 42 chromosomes, it could be causing problems, and that could be the root cause. Remember, the cure is in the cause. First, stop all dairy. Dairy is like gasoline to IBS. I took nutrition from Dr. T. Colin Campbell, and as I took it from Cornell, I remember the course, Diseases of Affluence. And in that course, Dr. Campbell taught that dairy is the most significant carcinogen ever discovered. Dairy is the most significant carcinogen ever discovered, is what was in my text. Dr. Campbell grew up on a dairy farm. As I mentioned earlier, I, as a small boy, lived on a dairy farm. The most significant chemical carcinogen ever discovered, dairy. So even if you're worried about your IBS and you have to stop using dairy, even if you don't have IBS, quit drinking and eating the most cancer-causing food that you have. Caffeine. Caffeine is another item on IBS. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. Also, you want to stop all meat eating. And as I mentioned earlier, wheat and gluten. The other thing that really exacerbates IBS problems is stress, the #1 diagnosis in America. And be sure you listen to our series on stress. Terrible, terrible on IBS. Exercise helps with it. You want to eat slowly. See, when you eat your food, several things need to happen in the mouth. You want to masticate it, puree it. We don't have teeth in our stomach. And so you want to chew it up. And then you want to mix the pre-digestive enzymes, the amylase, the protease, all those guys that are in your saliva. When I teach in the schools, we call it spit. You want to mix it up. Have you ever gone and mixed concrete in a wheelbarrow? And you pour in the sackcrete, and you put in the water, and you take your hoe and you move it maybe once or twice, maybe 3 times. Is it ready to pour in the hole? Or you're making a cake, and you have a bowl, and you put in the powder, and then you put in the liquid, and you take your spoon, you just kind of move it around a couple times. Is it ready to go in the oven? No. Neither is that wheelbarrow of concrete ready. You've got to keep mixing it until every piece of that dry sackcrete soaks up the water. So it becomes a compound. It becomes concrete, a mixture. In that bowl that you're making the cake, you've got to make all that powder has to absorb that liquid, and so you take a mixer and mix it to where it's just mush. All the dry is sucked up the wet. When you chew your food, you want to, every piece of food needs to soak up your saliva, because in that saliva is like chainsaws starting to rip apart the proteins. Very, very important. If you don't chew right, if you don't eat slowly, it can cause problems with your IBS. Aloe vera, very, very good for IBS. Trace minerals, giving you the nutrients. Then there's a colon formula that we make. We'll talk about in our kitchen medicine segment. I encourage you to watch our kitchen medicine segment. Psyllium seed, which is whole psyllium seed, slippery elm, marshmallow root, peppermint, and spearmint, and we'll give the formula on that series. Carob powder is also good. You can mix it in with like some applesauce or something if you don't like the taste of it. And again, you want to thoroughly chew your food as you slowly eat your food. Ulcerative colitis, terrible, terribly painful. I was told by my physicians, my gastroenterologists, that I was going to die. They said, "Walt, you're going to die." We might be able to save you if we cut your colon out, but as it stands right now, you're going to die because from down near your appendix, all the way up your ascending, across your transverse, down your ascending to your rectum, they said, your colon looks like it's been drugged down the interstate. It looks like a raw piece of hamburger meat. The whole thing. There's no intact, when we look in there, there is no intact tissue. It's just hamburger meat. It's painful, terribly painful. What do you do? Well, first you want to follow the IBS protocol. If it's bleeding, you use cayenne pepper. Remember we talked about cayenne pepper being able to stop bleeding. It cauterizes it. White willow bark if bleeding. And then you want to eat a potato soup. Not like what Mary Lou used to make me before that, what actually got me into that problem. See, when she made potato soup, she'd have potatoes, and she'd have almost a stick of butter, sour cream, half and half, salt, black pepper. Oh, it was good, but it was killing me. So you want to make a potato soup. It has potatoes, carrots, celery, onions. Put some garlic in there if you'd like to. Make it to the consistency you like. You can puree it up if you want to. And you want somewhere between a pint and a quart each meal. And that's all you're going to eat for breakfast, dinner, and supper for the next 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Amazing how that heals that tissue. And then, until you see ulcerative colitis is gone, no more raw fruits or vegetables because they irritate it, except you may be able to handle a banana, but no fruit raw. So if you want some apples, you got to have applesauce. If you want pears, you got to have pear sauce. If you want peaches, you got to have peach sauce. If you want vegetables, you got to cook them because raw is going to re-irritate that colon. But you know what? I'm here today. Within 6 months, my ulcerative colitis was totally healed. Until 6 months later, after I was healed, I was driving from Virginia. I'd moved up to Virginia, and I was driving back home for the weekend, and we hadn't sold our home down in North Carolina yet, and so I was going down for the weekend to be with the family, and on the way down, I-81, I see this sign on the side of the interstate. Just 2 letters, D-Q. For y'all over in Afghanistan or wherever you are listening right now, that means Dairy Queen. And I loved blizzards, and I thought, you know, I've been 6 months, and I haven't had any dairy in 6 months. I'm doing well. My ulcerative colitis is healed. Just one. That won't be no problem. I like the banana split with malt. So I pulled off, went across the interstate, went on. I can still remember it today. It's been 16 years ago. Drove across, there was DQ on the left. I pull in there, I go in, I ordered my blizzard with malt, get back in the car, set it down in the seat, get back on I-81 heading south towards North Carolina. I pick it up. And I'm just enjoying, I hadn't had dairy in a year, because it took 6 months to heal. It's been 6 months now. Oh, that blizzard tasted so good. And then it hit me. If you've ever had ulcerative colitis, you know what the knife is. It literally is like someone stabbed a knife into your stomach. And I was over the steering wheel. I'm going, oh no, I haven't had this feeling in over 6 months. What do I do? I said, okay, Blizzard, you're over there. And I said, God, please, I will never do dairy again. Take this pain away from me. Make it to where I didn't turn this ulcerative colitis back on. Heal me. Well, it didn't just go away like that, but it went away. But you know what? I haven't had any more problems. It took me, several miles down the road until that pain went away. But that ulcerative colitis did not come back. God kept His bargain. I kept my bargain. I didn't even get half of it done. I threw it away when I got gas the next time. So Dairy is terrible for ulcerative colitis. H. pylori. My daughter was having symptoms of H. pylori, and I called a friend of mine and a physician, and I said, Jim, I think Ashley has H. pylori. Can I send her over there and you test her? He said, sure, send her on over. So I sent her over to Jim, and Jim did some blood work, and she came back, and then he called me a few days later, and he said, Walt, you're right, it's H. pylori. He said, thank you, appreciate it. And Jim knows that I'm not going to want a prescription. I just want a diagnosis. See, it's kind of like when your car's broke down, it's not running right, it's shaking a little bit, and you got these new highfalutin cars that have computers in them, and you're not sure what could be wrong with it. It could just be even the computer that's messed up. So you take it over to the mechanic, and he puts it on the machine, and the mechanic goes, Walt, not a problem. It's your number one plug's fouled out. No problem. I'll fix it for you. I said, that's okay. I know how to change plugs. I know where my number one plug is. I appreciate it. How much to owe you for that diagnostic tool, that diagnosis? And so I pay him for the diagnosis, but I don't pay him for changing my plug because I can do that myself. Go back home, change out my plug, and my car runs fine. Our bodies are the same way. There's times that we need diagnosis, that we can go and we can get some lab work done. We can get a physician who knows how the body works, and so he assesses you, and he does a history and a physical. He does a physical on you, and he finds out this is what your problem is. I appreciate it. And he wants to write you a prescription. Let him write you a prescription. Don't argue with him, because he'll argue till the cows come home. Then go on home and do what God wants you to do. Ask God what plan He wants you to do. So Ashley comes back, so he calls me and he says it's H. pylori, so we used the allicin. We used 20 drops 3 times a day, 45 days. We also used a probiotic. Boom, knocked out the H. pylori. Allicin is very strong. It's the component in garlic that builds the immune system. Remember, it takes 24 cloves of garlic to make 1 drop of allicin. Constipation. Got constipation? A lot of folks have constipation today. Whether they admit it or not, I had a lady come in one time, and I was surprised. She was in her late 30s, very trim, model-like person, and she comes in. I said, "Can I help you?" And she said, "I need some help. I have problems with constipation." She had a hard time saying it. And I said, "Well, how often do you go?" She said, "About every 3 weeks." I want to make sure I understood her right, so I repeated back to her, "Every 3 weeks?" "Yes." "No distension? A lot of pain?" "It's uncomfortable." I said, "Okay." So I encouraged her to drink water, I encouraged her to exercise, and I encouraged her and I gave her some fiber. She came back several weeks later and wanting something else. And she says, "This is just no good. This is no good." I said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Is it working?" She says, I'm going, but I'm going too often." I said, "How often are you going?" She says, "I go 3 times a day." I said, "How much do you eat? How many times a day do you eat?" And she said, "I eat 3 meals a day." I said, "Perfect, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do." And she said, "No, I don't want that." I said, "What's wrong?" She says, "I don't have time to go 3 times a day." You look at it, you figure up 365 divided by 21, she's not going that often over a year's time. Then you take 365 times 3, she's spending a whole lot more time in the bathroom, and she said that was a waste of time. I said, "Ma'am, I can't help you anymore. You're doing what you're supposed to do," and she frustratedly left, and I never have seen her since. I have, a couple years ago, I had 2 girls in the same year, both of them. One 6 months after the other, 3 weeks. The longest I ever had was a lady when I was working in Virginia. And she came in and she was having problems. Now this lady was in the car, could not even get out of the car. And so I had to go out to the car to see her. She was in so much pain. But she said it had been a month, 4 weeks since she had had a bowel movement. You can die from constipation. That's serious. Or an impaction, whatever was going on. So what do you do? First of all, when a person gets up in the morning, they want to drink, if you're having problems with constipation, drink 1 quart of warm water with lemon in it. That volume of water will help to try to loosen things up down there. The warm water helps to loosen things up. The lemon does other things. Then you want to make sure that you're getting enough water. And people say, oh, I'm drinking my 8 glasses and they're 300 pounds. According to the University of California at Davis, it takes a half a gallon of water to run a kindergartner, 5 years old. A half a gallon to run a 5-year-old. I'm a whole lot bigger than a 5-year-old, and especially that 300-pound person's bigger than a kindergartner. So how much do you need? From kindergarten to about 128 pounds, they need a half a gallon of water. Over 128 pounds, they take your body weight divided by 2, you need that many ounces. But that's just to sit on the couch. That's not if you're out working in your garden or running or walking. This last week, I got a text from my son this morning that a fire that we started fighting just last week, which was over a 1,000-acre wildland fire. We are certified through the United States Forest Service, and they finally have it under control as of this morning. We had 3 big helicopters in a Huey, had 4 helicopters, and we had a lot of men there. And when I go fight those fires and we're raking those lines, the United States Forest Service says that we have to drink a gallon of water every hour and a half. It used to be every 2 hours. Now they tell us every hour and a half. Homeland Security just sent word down that where we're on a disaster and we expire or we dehydrate a liter, it takes 3 liters to rehydrate that liter that we just lost. And they expect us to rehydrate a 3-to-1. And so if you're just sitting on the couch, playing on your computer, or sitting at a desk, the numbers that I just mentioned are just to do that. But if you're out walking and exercising and working in your garden and sweating like you should, you need even more than what we just mentioned. Fiber. Fiber is critical. Have you ever gardened? If it hasn't, we're in a drought in the southeast right now, and the ground's kind of hard because it's no water. Also, if you have clay soil and you don't have a lot of humus, a lot of compost, it gets hard. Well, same thing about fecal material. If you don't eat enough fiber, then you're not going to have a loose fecal material. And back to water. When you're dehydrated, the hypothalamus is going, where's some water? Oh, there's some in the colon. Well, it's supposed to suck water, some out of the colon, but not as much as it does when you're dehydrated. I mean, you're just sucking that stuff right back in you. You're trying to get rid of that stuff. You want that high fiber diet. And how do you get high fiber? Whole foods. How much fiber is in meat? 0. How much fiber is in refined foods? Very, very little. You want a whole food, plant-based diet that's full of fiber. Psyllium seed husk whole or psyllium seed whole is a great source. Flaxseed is a good source. There's many fibers that you can add. You want around 50 to 60 grams of fiber a day to have good bowel movement. And you can add some things. There's exercise is also very important. That walking is very important. Eating at the same time every day. So the 4 big ones for helping to keep you from getting constipation. Number 1, hydration. Number 2, fiber. Number 3, exercise. And number 4 is eating at the same time every day. And then you can do an abdominal massage where you're moving like this, move across and down. The fellow who taught this was a fellow by the name of John Harvey Kellogg. And what he used to use, he would take a cannonball and he would put a piece of leather around it and sew it up like a softball, and the patient would lay on the bed, set it down here and roll that cannonball. Well, we don't have cannonballs around anymore, and so you can do some massage. Also, when you go to the bathroom, toilets haven't been around that long. Outhouses haven't been around that long. There's still parts of the world that may be listening today that don't even have outhouses, and folks still squat. Squatting actually helps with constipation. But what you can do is you can put a stool under your feet that moves them up, and that helps when you're constipated. Magnesium is a good source to help with constipation. I like that a lot. Prune juice is good. Castor oil. We'll talk about a castor oil pack. Well, you can drink some of that stuff. But I like herbs like senna. Cascara sagrada is a little more aggressive. Haritaki is a little more aggressive. I like senna a lot. That works well. But you don't want to have constipation. We're shown the more prone you are to constipation, the more prone you are to colorectal cancer, especially colon cancer. A transit time. That's when you put something in your mouth to when the fiber comes out, no more than 24 hours. If it's over that, you now increase your risk of cancer of the colon. Cancer of the colon in America is the third leading cause of death in both men and women. Hemorrhoids. If constipated, use the constipation protocol. Aloe vera. You can drink aloe vera. You can take aloe vera and you can carve it like a suppository. And you put a toothpick on it and you can stick it in the freezer. And then you can take it out and put some lubricant on it, and then you can apply it up into the rectum if it's an internal hemorrhoid. Remember where it's going. Don't make it too big. Or you can take a pair of gloves, a small size of latex gloves or non-latex if you have a problem with latex, and you can fill it with aloe vera juice and you can freeze it. And that will make a suppository. Some people use apple cider vinegar, cabbage poultice for hemorrhoids, coconut oil, witch hazel. You can take a bedside toilet. And you know what a bedside toilet is. You take the pot out of it, and then you sit the person down on it, and if it's an external hemorrhoid, it kind of, the bottom opens like this and the hemorrhoid sticks out, and you can take a hose with hot water and cold water. This is hydrotherapy. You can spray the area with warm water for 3 minutes and then cold water for 1 minute. You can do a hydrotherapy treatment with a hose, and the hose actually kind of massages it. That's the hydrotherapy hot and cold douche. Rutin, squat, don't sit on the toilet. You can actually just squat, but don't sit. That helps also in the hemorrhoid problem. Exercise, lose weight. That can be an issue. Probiotics can help. Water. Drink plenty of water. Soak the area with warm water, 10 to 15 minutes, 3 times a day. That can help. A sitz bath can help. An ice pack or cold compress. The cabbage poultice that I mentioned. Watch our series on kitchen medicine that talks about how to make a cabbage poultice for hemorrhoids. It'll tell you there what to do. Enlarged prostate. We see quite a bit of enlarged prostates. And Duke University back in the early 90s said don't drink milk. Milk exacerbates prostate issues. This is in the early 90s, Duke University. Saw palmetto is an excellent herb. Pumpkin seeds have a lot of zinc in them. Padiarco. If you're having problems getting up multiple times in the night, saw palmetto, but Padiarco works very well for that. Shrinking that prostate. Pygem, flaxseed, zinc, 40, 50 milligrams of zinc, but take some copper along with it, 3 to 5 milligrams of copper. A sitz bath, iodine. They found that taking 12.5 milligrams of iodine significantly helps to prevent prostate cancer. Another thing that is good for prostate is you're milking that prostate, you having normal bowel movements, routine bowel movements 3-4 times a day helps to milk the prostate as it's going by it. That's important, according to a urologist. Female hormones. We're seeing a lot of issues with female hormones. We're seeing a lot of issue with men's hormones. Why? Number one, we're not eating healthy food. We're not getting the nutrients that our body requires to make the proper hormones. It's blowing our adrenals. So number one, you've got to have a good diet. And juicing is probably the best thing that I have found to address female hormones. At least a quart of vegetable juice a day. If you can just only juice, it's amazing. Amazing what drinking 16 ounces of vegetable juice for breakfast, dinner, and supper will do for 7 to 10 days for women's hormones. We used to have girls come to us in college and they would quit having their cycle. They were in college age and the stresses of college and the ramen noodles, their cycle would just stop. We'd encourage them to eat healthy, but many times we weren't that successful. But we would make their juice for them and they would come in and get their juice every day. Within 30 days, boom, they were back having a cycle. Very important. Wild yam cream is a transdermal cream from yams, sweet potatoes that work well. You use it twice a day. Wild yam cream helps your body produce the right amount of progesterone, and when you have the right amount of progesterone, you have the right amount of estrogen. And so that works very well for stabilizing the hormones. And then the next one is I like nettle tea. Nettle tea is probably the most nutritious of all the herbs. Super, super nutritious and really helps women with their hormones. Also dandelion leaf is good for women's hormones. Flaxseed. They went with women with hormones, they gave them hormone imbalance, they gave them flaxseed every day. Over 50% of the women just taking flaxseed, they had significant improvement in their hormones. Oat straw is very good. Oat straw tea for female hormones. Vitex, that's chaste tree, it's an herb. Address stress. When you have stress, it blows the adrenals and that affects your hormones. You've got to get stress under control if you're having hormone issues. Rest. Women know that if rest is vital to their hormones working right. They've got to be to bed. They've got to get their rest. When a woman is overworked, it just wipes out their endocrine system. And their hormones are going to go off. A woman has to have rest. A man has to have rest. But especially women, you need rest if you want to keep your hormones in check. And again, address the adrenals. And there's herbs for that. Allergies. There's food allergies, but there's allergies from plants and that kind of thing. Nettle tea is the best thing I have found. Either 3 capsules twice a day or just drinking nettle tea. Local raw honey. Now you got to be careful of your honey because there's a new law in my state of Tennessee that in order for it to say raw or 100%, it's got to be only 100% because there was a person, there was many, in our state that was adding something called corn syrup to the honey. They were cutting it to save money. And they were buying corn syrup by the barrels, high fructose corn syrup, and adding it to the honey. So our state representative, whose wife is a nutritionist, said, wait, there's a problem here. One of our children could be allergic to corn, and we think honey is fine. It said pure 100% honey, and it's not. So they passed a law that it has to be pure. Well, the reason I say this is because you want to make sure that it's that way where you live, that it's pure 100% honey, plus it needs to be local honey to address your immune system, to help with allergy. Bee pollen, bromelain can help, zinc, bayberry, eyebright, mullein tea. Mullein's great, and it grows all over the world, and NAC. Inflammation. Inflammation is, I think, a major problem out there today, whether it's in the body or in the vascular system. Cardiac issues, I'm more concerned about the C-reactive protein and the homocysteine than I am just basic cholesterol. Yes, cholesterol, we got to monitor it, but the real enemy is that inflammation, because it inflames the vascular walls, it scars the vascular walls, therefore making it more prone to have that atherosclerosis and eventually the arteriosclerosis. Inflammation, drinking some lemon water each morning can help with inflammation. Drinking water. Water helps with inflammation. Dehydration causes inflammation. The new wheat diet, the new wheat causes inflammation. So if you live in a country that has this new modern wheat from Monsanto, those guys that have moved it from 16 chromosomes to 42 chromosomes, that will cause inflammation. Turmeric is good for inflammation. The curcumin, MSM, a big favorite of mine. You can take MSM powder. It comes from plants. I learned about it from my veterinarian many years ago. I had a dog that had arthritis, and we gave it just a spoonful on its food. It'd eat it, and boom, the arthritis would go away. And we'd forget to put it on its food, and then the dog couldn't go up the stairs again. We put the MSM back on there, and boom, it'd go up and down the stairs. And I was having some challenges, and my wife, Aunt Mary Lou, asked our physician at the time. I hadn't left regular health care yet, and he did natural. He's a fellow that helped me with my other problem. He said, use MSM. It's really good for humans too. Use 1 teaspoon twice a day for a week, and then after the week you go to 2 teaspoons twice a day from there on. It works best if you use vitamin C, but you don't want to use citrus fruit. Citrus fruit seems to nullify the MSM. Some people use even more. Bromelain, coconut oil, tart cherry juice is a good one, ginger is a good one, cloves, rosemary, Jamaican allspice, oregano, marjoram, sage, thyme, and then the charcoal poultice we use for inflammation. If it's an area on the body, and we'll put charcoal poultice on that. Shingles. Shingles is very, very painful. And what we do for shingles is we'll use olive leaf extract, 800 milligrams twice a day. It's a great antiviral. Well then, or you can use allicin. Allicin works well for shingles. The castor oil pack that you can listen to on our series on kitchen medicine. We teach you how to make a castor oil pack. You put that over the affected area, and that will dry it up. A charcoal poultice can be used if you don't have castor oil. If it's shingles is in the eye, don't put a castor oil pack over the eye. Use a charcoal poultice over the eye because there's concern about castor oil and possibly damaging the eye. It's depending on who you talk to, so I'm very, very careful with the eyes. So if there's a possibility, I don't want to mess with it. B-complex. B-complex is phenomenal for shingles because what happens is stress exacerbates shingles. B-complex, B-complex 100, 1 each meal, works very well for addressing that stress. Back when I first got into healthcare, back in 1978, I was at Florida Hospital, and there's an old doc there. He said, Walt, if you want to address stress with your folks you're working with, use B-complex. Now, he was just an old drug-writing doc, but he understood the value of B vitamins. He was right on the mark. Flaxseed, eat fresh, ground every day, vitamin C, and also hydrotherapy, fever treatments. There's other things, colloidal silver, but these are things, old remedies that can help. Type 2 diabetes. It really bothers me as I was speaking at a high school just last week. And as I was talking with these kids, I asked them, I said, they were high school seniors, I said, can you reverse diabetes? Yes or no? No. All the hands went up. I said, yes. Can you reverse diabetes? Type 2. Not one hand went up. I said, you can. And they go, no way, you can't do it. You can. Reversing diabetes, in the first 20 years of my career in healthcare, I never saw a care plan that said reversing diabetes. It was always diabetic management through pharmaceuticals. Then I left that and I went into lifestyle health, and we had a 98% reversal rate of type 2 diabetes. 98%. And I remember as I was telling the folks that as I left allopathic care, I said, I'm going to go somewhere that we can reverse type 2 diabetes. And the corporate office told me, Walt, you're crazy. Don't do that. Don't do that. I said, even type 1, there's some improvement. They said, Walt, now you're stupid. No way can that happen. You're going to ruin your career. Your reputation in healthcare, you can't do that. Well, guess what? We did. And you can too. Reversing diabetes type 2 is simple. Stabilizing type 1 is reasonable and obtainable. What do you do? Number one, you've got to manage the ideal body weight. How does it work? You've got a cell. And that cell has receptors, we'll call them little doors, that allows glucose to get into the cell. And what happens is that glucose comes from the blood, goes into the cell, and everybody's happy. Cell glucose is good, blood glucose is good, until the cell starts getting big. And the receptors become insulin resistant. And they don't allow the glucose in as well. So now cell glucose goes down, blood glucose goes up, the brain tells the pancreas produce more insulin, and to try to make these receptors allow glucose in, we take medication to make the glucose go in. And you can do it with managing it through pharmaceuticals, metformin, insulin, whatever it may be. But there's side effects. You lose your eyes. You can be a renal patient, go on dialysis. You can have neuropathy like that foot you saw earlier. They had that the foot was half eaten off, looked like a shark got a bite of it. We found all we had to do is shrink that cell. Receptors start allowing the glucose in. Cell glucose comes to what it should be. Blood glucose goes down. Pancreas is happy, tells the brain's happy, tells the pancreas to quit producing as much insulin, and blood insulin level goes to normal. I had a guy come last year. He was a 32-year-old black male. He had a, let's see here, his glucose was never below 200. He was on 50 units of insulin a day, and within 4 days, he was taking no insulin at all. I saw him 6 months later at the car wash in the little town I work in. I said, "How are you doing?" And we worked with him for several months, but he had gone, and I saw him for the first time in several months, and I said, "How's it going? How's the diabetes?" And he said, "There's no diabetes." "Are you on any meds?" "No, I'm fine." Within 4 days, he was off his insulin. Is that possible? Yes. Ideal body weight. You want a BMI of 22, 23, 21, 22. I like 22. But some folks are big. And so you may look at something a little more accurate. It's percent body fat. You may have a little more muscle. And so it throws those numbers off a little bit on the BMI. The Duke diet is tremendous for attacking diabetes. Duke University has been doing this program for 82 years. They started in 1934. A very, very effective diet for diabetes. Brown rice and fruit, or brown rice and salad. Simply Raw. There's a physician in Arizona that used Simply Raw. And all the patients eat there is a raw fruit for breakfast, raw vegetables for dinner, and raw fruit for supper. And then there's juicing, what we did for that fella who was off in 4 days. You can just juice a vegetable juice, and that's it. You can combine the two. And until that person gets to that ideal body weight or that BMI or that percent body fat that they should be at, leave them on one of those 3 diets is the best thing I have found. And we're going to talk also in another series on weight loss. I encourage you to watch that one because that's the key, weight loss. And then once you get to that, then you want to stay on the best diet in the world. The best diet in the world. Cornell University, Cambridge University spent 20 years trying to figure out what's the best diet for people. They looked at what causes people to die quicker or causes people to live longer. And they found that this special diet, people live longer. Actually, they live 15 years longer than the other people. CNN thought this was crazy. And so Dr. Gupta did a special and brought in these cardiologists and found no, Cornell was exactly right. They called it the last heart attack, their special program on this. Well, it's kind of interesting. Cornell did not figure this diet. I found it. It was written in Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3 is where God told Adam and Eve what to leave when they left the garden. A whole food, plant-based diet. Exercise. Exercise is critical for diabetes. I would meet with my patients at 6 o'clock in the morning, and let's say you came in with a glucose of, let's say, 185, 195. Go take a 30-minute power walk and come back, and it would be down to 130, 135, 140. Just by a power walk. Chromium, I like chromium picolinate, or trichromium. It's got chromium picolinate, chromium picolinate, and one other one. Trichromium works extremely well. Genema silvestri is a good herb. Fenugreek, cedarberry, blueberry leaves, peach tree leaves, and basil. All those, basil works. Just take some basil leaves and put it in your food. Say about 5, 6 basil leaves a day. Just go pick them out like you would peppermint leaves or spearmint leaves. Pick some basil, put it in your food, and it normalizes blood sugar. Doesn't mean you want to manage it through that, but it will help you get under control faster as you're reversing your diabetes. Heart function. The #1 killer of Americans today, both in men and women. The #1 killer of firefighters is not fire. It is not smoke inhalation. It is heart attacks. The best diet for heart disease in the world is the Duke rice diet. Works very, very well. Like I mentioned, they've been doing it for 82 years. A whole food, plant-based diet once you get it under control. Water, exercise, rest. You want to abstain from tobacco and alcohol and drugs. You want to manage your stress. Stress is very important to manage if you have cardiovascular disease. Any reason, but definitely with cardiovascular. The best herb I have found for the heart is hawthornberry. I had a man come into me one time. He didn't have much means, lived in the country, and he said he had an ejection fraction. It's how well the heart perfuses, how well it squeezes. And he had an EF of 15. He used the hawthornberry, went to 55. I had a lady come in that she had an 18 ejection fraction. She went to 65. She added coenzyme Q10 to that, and she did the Duke diet. Her cardiologist at University of Tennessee at Knoxville couldn't believe it. He started using this protocol on the other patients. Coenzyme Q10, magnesium. We talked about magnesium earlier for the heart. Very, very important for the heart. Calcium-rich foods, potassium. If you want a good source of potassium, drink coconut water. Another good source of potassium is blackstrap molasses. Blackstrap molasses. Garlic, phenomenal, phenomenal for the heart. Garlic. Whether you do it just raw garlic or the allicin. Allicin works really well for heart disease. Vitamins A, B vitamins or B complexes, vitamin C, and vitamin E are also very important for heart function. Hypertension. There's several major causes of hypertension, and you want to get to the root cause. Again, the cure is in the cause. The biggest cause, the #1 cause of hypertension is stress. Stress raises cortisol. Stress lowers potassium. Both of those raise blood pressure. Dehydration. When a person is dehydrated, their blood is thicker and it's stickier. When a person's dehydrated, they don't have enough water in the brain. The brain should be 85% water. When they're dehydrated and they don't have enough water in the brain, it makes them more prone to be stressed. When they're dehydrated, the kidneys don't work as well. It's the kidneys that regulate blood pressure. When they're dehydrated, they don't urinate as much. And it's through urine that you get rid of sodium. And elevated sodium will cause hypertension. So there's many reasons that dehydration causes hypertension. I had a man one time, well, as a lady. I was at a health fair and I just moved to this community, and she came up to me and she says, "My husband has hypertension and the medication is not working. What do I do?" She says, "It's got to be simple. It's got to be cheap." I said, "Does he drink water?" She says, "No, he doesn't do much water." I said, "Have him drink the amount of water that we talked about before." She said, "Okay." And I didn't hear anything else about her until 2 weeks later. They invited me to come to the hospital, and I was speaking in the boardroom to all these healthcare professionals about lifestyle health. And as they introduced me, I stood up and I was turning my PowerPoint on. This lady stands up in the back of the room and she said, "Let me tell you about this guy here. I met him 2 weeks ago at the health fair." And I'm thinking, oh no, did it work? I'm getting ready to try to convince all these healthcare folks that lifestyle health is better than their drugs. She said, 2 weeks ago I saw Walt at the health fair. My husband had hypertension. The medication didn't work, and Walt said that he needed to drink adequate water. He did that. Not only did his blood pressure go down, but he had to quit taking his medication because the blood pressure medicine pushed his blood pressure too low. He's totally off all medications and he has a normal blood pressure. Does that happen all the time? No, but hydration is huge for hypertension. You want to rule out there's kidney problems because remember, kidneys are the switches that run the blood pressure, that determine it. You want to maintain ideal body weight. Very important when a person has hypertension. You want to make sure that they're within ideal body weight. You want to monitor their sodium intake, especially if it's Morton salt. You want to use the sea salt, not Morton salt. If you do use salt, but use it sparingly. You want to rule out they have problems with clogged arteries, atherosclerosis, because the hole is a little smaller now. You know, it's kind of like on the garden hose. You go out there and you got water coming out of it. Well, you can put a nozzle on it to spray it. With a smaller hole, you can wash the car better. Well, it increases the pressure. So when you have clogged arteries or atherosclerosis, it's going to raise the blood pressure. Or if it's atherosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries, when your heart beats, the vessels go like this. You know, you can feel it right here. You can feel it beating. It's expanding. When you have hardening of the arteries, it does not expand like it should, and you're retaining that pressure inside, so that increases blood pressure if you have hardening of the arteries. You want to rule that out or address that if that's it. You want to manage the heart function. Is the heart working well? And then things like celery. I was listening to a physician just recently, and he said that he gives his patients celery juice every day, and he's managing the blood pressure. Well, I know a doctor, a friend of mine, he called me and he says, "I know potassium's good." He said, what's the best source of potassium? I've got a buddy, another physician, who has high blood pressure. What can I use? I said, blackstrap molasses. It's got about 730 milligrams of potassium in a tablespoon. Do it twice a day, 3 times a day. So I mailed it to him, and in 3 days, his buddy, the other physician, was off his blood pressure medicine. Now, that's not the way to go. It can help temporarily, but you don't want to manage your problems by natural stuff. You want to reverse it. Why is his potassium low? Because he's stressed. Stress lowers potassium. Well, if you manage the stress, then the potassium's not going to go low. Being deficient in potassium is only secondary to the stress. Magnesium is also good for hypertension, adequate magnesium. Exercise, very, very good. A whole food, plant-based diet. And the big thing is trust in God. So important. So important for as we deal with stressors. Trust God. That's where the power comes from. Hypercholesterolemia, high cholesterol. And as I mentioned before, I'm not that as much into cholesterol as I am to inflammation. Huge. Inflammation's huge. Keep that homocysteine in level. Keep that C-reactive protein in level. But yes, we've got to make sure we have decent cholesterol. And so don't eat anything with a mama, is what I used to tell people. If it's got a mother, it's got cholesterol. Well, guess what? I found there's something that doesn't have a mother that's going to raise your LDL. Guess what it is? If you live in America, if you live here in Canada, you probably have it. If you live in England, it's not going to do it. The new wheat. You know that 42 chromosome wheat? Researchers have found the new wheat that's been genetic or it's been super hybridized raises LDL. So yes, you don't want to eat anything with a mama. I used to have a cholesterol of 288. 288. And the guys at work said, "Walt, look at your daddy's family, look at your mama's family, especially your daddy's family. It's genetically predisposed. There's nothing you can do. You got to take a statin drug," but I didn't want to take a statin. I was still working in regular health care. So I decided to go. I thought, well, I used the rationale. For hypertension, we're doing a no added salt diet. So let me try a no added cholesterol diet. What will that do to me? I went on a no added cholesterol diet. My cholesterol went from 288 to 104. I was not genetically predisposed. I was East Tennessee predisposed. I was eating East Tennessee food. No, I wasn't eating meat. I'd given up meat when I was 16 or 17 at the stockyard. I saw what was coming in and what we were taking if it was sick. So I'd quit eating meat years ago, but I was eating a lot of cheese and a lot of dairy. And when I cut that out, my cholesterol went from 288 to 104. So don't eat anything that has a mama, but also get away from this new wheat. Go gluten-free if you're in a country that has this new super hybridized wheat. The Duke diet is excellent. The Duke rice diet, Dr. Kempner's diet from Duke University, is good for lowering cholesterol. The juice flush, the red yeast rice is a statin, but it's a natural statin. That works well. There's something called Cholesterol Pro. It comes from a fruit that will lower cholesterol. It raises HDL and lowers LDL. I like it better than the red yeast rice. Here's how you increase HDL. You want to increase it. See, what happens is HDL is like the cops, and they go out and get the bad guys, who's the LDL. They go out there and they handcuff them, and they take them back to jail, which is the liver. So the more cops you got, the more bad guys you get. You got less cops, you're going to have more bad guys going crazy. It's that simple. So the way you raise HDL, garlic, the allicin, why do I keep mentioning this allicin? Because it's just super, super strong stuff. Vitamin D. If you have a low vitamin D, you're going to see a direct relationship with your HDL. So if you want to raise your HDL, your good cholesterol, then you want to eat more garlic. You want to raise your vitamin D to around 100. Restrict cashews. Cashews in moderation are okay. But if you eat cashew gravy, cashew milk, cashew butter, whatever, cashew, we actually found that our patients' HDL dropped. But when we stopped using the cashews and started doing more almonds, then we found that our HDL stayed where it should be. Exercise raises HDL. Beans raise HDL. Non-gluten grains, we talked about that. Flaxseed is good for it. Walnuts, almonds, chia seeds, avocados. Those are all good for helping with raising that HDL. Atherosclerosis and arteriosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is that clogged artery we spoke of. Arteriosclerosis is the hardening of the artery that we spoke of. What do you want to do? Reduce vascular inflammation, vasculitis. And I keep mentioning this because there's a lot of deaf ears out here on this problem. The Duke diet is good for that. A whole food plant-based diet. Lower the omega-6s. Omega-6s are the bad guys on inflammation. What do you got there on omega-6s are the oils. When I work with people, they come in with problems with inflammation. Well, it's because of our southern diet. We fry everything. We fry our okra. We fry our tomatoes. We fry our potatoes. We fry, if we got it, we fry it. And it's not healthy, all this oil. And so, especially the omega-6 oils, the canola oil, the wesson oil, the vegetable oils, even those guys are omega-6s. You want to move over to an omega-3 oil like your olive oil or your flax oil or a coconut oil. And even then you don't want to eat a lot of it because a lot of oil can raise your triglycerides. Eat nuts. Nuts are good to lower to help with that problem. No alcohol. You want to manage your stress. And herbs and spices such as turmeric, ginger, garlic, basil, and cayenne pepper. A lady came in to me one day and she said, "Walt, I just came back from the doctor and he checked my carotids and both of my carotids are in the mid-70s, occluded. What can I do?" So I got her some lecithin granules and she did 1 tablespoon twice a day. just twice a day. Now they tell us 3 times a day. 1 tablespoon twice a day of lecithin granules. Now it can either be soy lecithin or it can be sunflower lecithin. A lot of folks like the sunflower lecithin because they're wanting to move away from the soy lecithin. I mean, especially if it's if you do the soy lecithin, you want to make sure it's GMO, non-GMO soybeans. So she did it. She went back to her physician a little over 2 months later, right around 2 months. No, it was right at 2 months. And she went back and they checked her carotids and they were in the mid-20s. In 2 months, her atherosclerosis went from 75% occlusion to the mid-20% occlusion by just using the lecithin granules. I like the granules better than the oil. You kind of know what you have better there. Psyllium, hawthorn, horsetail, ashwagandha, Google. These things will help to address atherosclerosis and arterial sclerosis. Triglycerides. Several things that raise triglycerides. Sugar. Sugar will raise triglycerides. People come in and say, well, I don't eat that much meat. Well, do you eat a lot of sugar? Oh, yeah. I like my sugar. How about stress? Do you know that stress raises triglycerides? It sure does. Well, I got a lot of stress at home or work. Cooking oils. I was doing a series one time. It was an 8 Weeks to Wellness program, and this family came, and they were from Colombia. They had a good diet. They're vegans. And they had a 14-year-old, I believe it was, girl. So I think she was right around 14 years old. And her triglycerides were out the roof. And we did labs at the beginning and the labs at the end. And the mama brings her to me and says, what can we do? And I said, well, let's see here. She doesn't eat meat. Does she eat sugar? No, she doesn't eat sugar. I'm strict. Does she have a lot of stress? No, she's 14. Does she eat a lot of oil? She goes, she pours olive oil on everything. She says, I cook with olive oil, but you know how some folks will pour salt on everything after the wife's already put salt in it? Well, this little girl would pour olive oil on everything after Mama put some olive oil in what needed some olive oil. I said, well, let's try that. For the next 8 weeks, no olive oil except what Mama puts on your plate. Deal? Deal. At the end of the 8-week program, we did her labs again. Her triglycerides were normal. So even olive oil, which is a healthier oil, you want to use it in moderation. No meat, a whole food plant-based diet. Flaxseed, grind it, eat it within 15 minutes of grinding. Red yeast rice can also help with triglycerides. Losing weight. I'm going to go quickly here because you're going to have an opportunity to watch a whole series that we're doing on weight loss. So let's go quick. Adequate water. Eat a whole food plant-based diet. And best yet, 2 meals a day, breakfast and dinner. Now, I'm a country boy. Dinner is that noon meal. Supper's that night meal. So breakfast and dinner. Don't eat supper because supper has a propensity to putrefy and ferment. And actually, breakfast, when you eat breakfast, it increases metabolism and you burn off calories. When you eat dinner, it increases metabolism, you burn off calories. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, God turns off your metabolism significantly. And what you eat after 3 o'clock, you start gaining weight. And the grandfather of weight loss worldwide was Dr. Koop, and he figured this out. And he found that when you would not eat anything after dinner, definitely nothing after 3, you'd lose weight. I lost 50 pounds in 3 months by doing this. I used to be 200 and some pounds. And Mary Lou says, you got to lose some weight. Your knees are having problems. I ate a good breakfast. I ate a good dinner. Nothing after dinner. And I lost right at 50 pounds in 3 months. Adequate bowel movements, very important. Manage your stress. Exercise. Go to bed by 9 o'clock. Some real good research coming out today about going to bed early at a right time affecting weight loss. The Duke diet, the vegetable juice diet, or the raw food diet. Very, very good, but watch our program that's in this same series on weight loss. Depression. There's a lot of depression out there today. Whether it's politics, whether it's at home, whether it's family, whatever. Wherever you are in the world, there's a lot of depression today. What do? Number one, trust in God. You want to have adequate hydration so the brain gets the water it needs. And if you are a smaller person, a gallon of water a day, minimum. If you're a bigger person, you'll need even more. Exercise outdoors in the sunshine, very important. You want a well-rounded plant-based diet. You want the nutrition going to the brain because depression is a brain thing. And so we're looking at things that's going to make that brain work the best that it can work. You want to go to bed by 9 o'clock. Important for depression. Very, very important. Good research on just the time a person goes to bed improving brain depression. Spend time in nature, gardening, with your animals. Do you like dogs? You like horses, cows? Go spend some time with the animals. They're very relaxing. It's amazing. Before I worked before I am now, I worked a lot. I'd get home, my wife, my kids were asleep. I'd come home, it was late. I'd open the door, and guess who met me? My golden retriever. She'd jump up and she'd put her hands on my shoulder, and I'd give her a big hug, and we'd just stand there at the door for a couple minutes. I'd just hugging her. And you know what? My stresses, I could feel them just leaving. Literally just falling off of me. Pet therapy is huge, y'all. Spend time in nature. B-complex works very good for depression. Lithium orotate works good for depression. Flaxseed, within 15 minutes of grinding. Trace minerals are also very good. Classical music is also important in depression. Herbs, skullcap, oat straw, St. John's wort, St. John's wort, you've heard of that. If you use St. John's wort, you want to make sure that you're not taking a medication that's similar to that because you're just taking too much of that same product. SAMe, 5-HTP, kava kava, hops, chamomile, valerian, and classical music. I had a lady come, and she was significant depression, and she literally, every time she saw, it wasn't even when she saw children, she would just go, oh no, I just killed a child. I don't know what was wrong. And the first time, she lived up in northern part of the United States, and when it first started happening, the cops went crazy. Called 911, they went crazy because there's this lady says, I just ran over a child. I just killed a child. But she didn't. But in her mind, and it was just constantly. And so she came down to stay with us for a month, and I worked a lot with a good friend of mine, Dr. Strachan I mentioned, and we used skullcap. He said, Walt, make it as thick as possible. Make it as thick as mud if you need to. But guess what? She overcame her depression. She actually went and started working at a daycare center. And God can heal depression. But you got to put those laws into effect that will address it. You want to at least read one chapter of Proverbs each day. Massage is good, hydrotherapy. You want to identify the causes. What are the flags? And you want to look at how to overcome those in one-on-one time with a positive and forward-thinking supporter individual. One-on-one time with a person that will help refocus you. Refocus you. If a person has depression, their eyes are on self. And so that's where animals are great, because you can get the eyes off self, get them on working with plants. So it gets the depressed person off of self, onto plants, onto the animals. And then you can then point them to Christ. That's where the healing is. Cancer, manage the stress, no sugar. Sugar is terrible for cancer. Vegetable juicing is the best thing I have found nutritionally, raw diet if you have to, but vegetable juicing is very, very important. Adequate water, herbal teas, and rotate them weekly. Immune boosters, cancer fighters, and blood purifiers. Look where you are. If you're in Malaysia today listening, then I encourage you to use herbs that are immune boosters, cancer fighters, and blood purifiers in Malaysia. If you're over in Russia, I encourage you to look for there. If you're in Romania, use those. Wherever you are in the world listening today, use those herbs in your area that God's put there. I'll just mention a few quickly. Immune boosters, podiarco, echinacea, elderberry, ginseng, garlic, ginger, turmeric, ginkgo biloba, red clover, astragalus, cat's claw, and asiac blend. Those are immune boosters. Cancer fighters, podiarco, red clover, poke. Be careful with poke. Know what you're doing with poke, because poke is poisonous if you use it wrong. Ginger, astragalus, butcher's broom, chaparral, phenomenal blood purifier. Cancer fighter. It shrinks the tumors. Very, very good blood purifier. Curcumin, garlic, allicin's even stronger. Feverfew, sheep sorrel, skullcap, aloe vera, rosemary, garlic. Blood purifiers, podiarco, red clover, chaparral, burdock root, dandelion, reishi mushrooms, lion's mane mushrooms, basil, garlic again is a good blood purifier. Parsley. Parsley is phenomenal. We'll listen to our kitchen medicine. It talks about parsley and how to use that as a blood purifier. Turmeric, barley juice is a good one. Chickweed, chicory, damiana, and devil's claw. Hydrogen peroxide. Listen to our kitchen medicine and we'll talk about hydrogen peroxide, food grade hydrogen peroxide, very important. Great for reversing cancer. Vitamin D3, get that as high as you can. Some doctors are pushing vitamin D as high as 200, 205 to be able to get rid of that cancer. Gallbladder liver cleanse. Exercise and fresh air and sunshine. Rebounding is very, very good for cancer because when you're jumping on that rebounder, it increases your white cell count 3 times, 300%, will last for 1 hour. So every hour on the hour, or every hour I have the cancer folks I work with jump on a rebounder, a mini trampoline. Hydrotherapy, there's fever treatments. A fever treatment will increase your white cell count 7-fold. 7-fold. It peaks at 5 hours. Contrast steam bath, rest is important. Forgiveness, this is interesting. I find in people I work with, especially ladies that have cancer, that when I ask them, is there anybody that you have a challenge with, anybody you haven't forgiven, they start crying. Whether it was a teacher or a girlfriend or their mother or whoever, they're hanging on to that. And until they turn loose of that, they have challenges. But when they turn loose of that, it's like, have you ever had a big credit card payment or a big house payment or car payment and you finally paid it off and just, whew, that load's gone? When you forgive people, that load's gone. And most important, trust in God. And this is the last one we're going to talk about today. I'm seeing a lot about thyroid. People come in with thyroid problems. Number one, no fluoride, no chlorine, no bromide. Bromide is a dough enhancer. It's also in soft drinks. Those 3 things inhibit the body's absorption of iodine. Also, you want to be on a gluten-free diet. This new wheat in the countries that have this new wheat, this new hybridized wheat, super hybridized wheat, is causing problems with thyroid. Now, if you're in Great Britain and you don't have that, then this is an issue that you need to look at. Iodine can be kelp, dulse, or a supplement. I'm finding not enough in the sea vegetables unless you're eating a lot. I'm really finding they need to take 50 milligrams of iodine. That's Lugol solution. To make that iodine absorb well, you need 200 milligrams of B2 and B2 and 1,000 milligrams of B3 a day. Zinc, 40 to 50 milligrams, no more than 80 milligrams of zinc a day. If you're taking a lot of zinc, you need some copper along with it, 3 to 5 milligrams with each 40 milligrams of zinc. Selenium, Very important for thyroid. You can either take a 200 or 300 milligrams, 200 or 400 milligrams, time released, of selenium, or you can eat 4 Brazil nuts a day. Selenium is a catalyst that's very important in the body. Tyrosine. Use L-tyrosine, about 200 milligrams a day. A charcoal poultice over the thyroid every night for a week. Then you can go to a bentonite clay pack every night in the week. And then you can finish off with a castor oil pack over the thyroid every night for a week and then repeat it. And we found that can help shrink the thyroid. Rest. Rest is important for thyroid. You've got to rest that body because when the immune system, when the adrenals are blown, when the endocrine system is so challenged with sleep deprivation, it affects thyroid function. And stress. Stress is huge. Stress is so big out there today. Well, y'all, I've enjoyed being here today with y'all. I encourage you to come back and to listen to the rest of our series as we talk about kitchen medicine, as we talk about weight loss, as we talk about how to get rid of stress and other areas. But I tell you, the most important that I can leave with you today is trusting God. God does the healing. Yes, you have to do your part. We can't just say, God, take care of me and not do a thing. We got to do our part. But if you try doing it on your own, you're not going to be successful because Jesus is the healer. And I encourage you to look at Jesus. Shall we close with prayer? Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for giving us these old mountain remedies. Things that just grow in our backyard. Things can be in our kitchen cabinets. Lifestyle. Those 8 laws of health that you've taught us. Lord, give us that desire to do it. Give us the willpower to do it. And then bless us as we apply these laws of health. As we step out in faith, trust in God and apply these instead of using those drugs that have the challenges with side effects. Lord, we thank you for caring for us. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.